The December snow didn't fall like it does in romance movies. It lashed against the face like shards of ground glass. I adjusted the strap of the thermal bag on my aching shoulder, feeling the familiar weight of the 6 gourmet lunchboxes and the coffee thermos that constituted the most important delivery of the day for Sabori Arte. The digital clock atop the bank across the street flashed red through the blizzard, 12:43 p.m. I had exactly 2 minutes to cross the avenue, pass through biometric security, and drop the package at the executive reception before the 12:45 p.m. deadline expired. I had been doing this for 2 years. 730 days of timed precision. 730 days of being a ghost who entered and exited the city's most imposing building without leaving a trace. The Vance Tower loomed before me, a monolith of brushed steel and bluish glass that pierced the gray winter clouds. To most people, it was merely a symbol of incalculable wealth. To me, a final-year architecture student mired in student loans, it was a case study in structural isolation. It was beautiful, technically perfect, and absolutely devoid of soul. I pushed through the heavy revolving doors, and the sound of the howling wind was instantly cut, replaced by the muffled, expensive silence of the lobby. The air in here smelled of ozone, polished marble, and old money. "Good afternoon, Anna," murmured the head of security, Mr. O'Malley, without taking his eyes off the monitors. He didn't even ask for my badge. I was part of the furniture. "Good afternoon, Mr. O'Malley," I replied, my voice echoing slightly in the vast empty space. I walked toward the black marble reception counter. It was Christmas time, but the only indication of it in the Vance Tower were the minimalist, cold decorations that had been installed that morning. Silver cone trees that looked like futuristic weapons, ice-white LED wreaths that emitted no warmth. The place felt like a luxury dental office, not a home, and certainly not a place where Christmas was celebrated. As a future architect, that offended me physically. As a delivery girl, it was none of my business. I placed the thermal bag on the counter. The order was always the same every day, come rain or shine, Nana's saffron risotto, or the ossobuco ragu. Heavy, warm, homemade food. The kind of food that hugs you. It was the only contradiction I knew about the mysterious Caleb Vance. The man who lived in an ice tower ate like someone desperate for warmth. "Delivery for Mr. Vance," I said to the receptionist, an impeccable blonde woman named Jessica, who usually treated me with the same consideration she gave a stapler. 12:45 p.m. sharp. I turned to leave, already mentally calculating if I would have time to run to the college library before my night shift at the buffet. The routine was sacred. I came in, delivered, disappeared. I was invisible. That's how it worked. Wait. The word was spoken with an urgency that made me freeze. It wasn't Jessica who spoke. It was a man in a gray suit standing near the private elevators, holding a tablet like a shield. I vaguely recognized him from business magazines, Elias, Caleb Vance's personal assistant. I turned slowly, my heart beginning to race for no reason. "Yes. Are you Anna? From Sabori Arte?" Elias asked, scanning me from head to toe. He didn't look disdainful, just stressed. Desperate. "That's me. Was there a problem with yesterday's order?" Nana guaranteed the seasoning was. "It's not about the food," Elias interrupted, walking toward me. "Mr. Vance wants to see you." The lobby stopped. Jessica stopped typing. Mr. O'Malley raised his head. I blinked, certain I had misheard. "Sorry, he wants to see the delivery?" "He wants to see you," Elias corrected, gesturing toward the private elevator that sat behind a frosted glass wall. That elevator that had no buttons. The one that led straight to Olympus, the 50th floor. Now. Cold panic flooded my stomach. In 2 years, I had never seen Caleb Vance. No one did. He was an urban legend, a billionaire recluse who commanded the real estate market from the shadows. If he wanted to see me, it could only be one thing: I had done something terribly wrong. Did I drop a hair in the food? Was I 30 seconds late last week? I needed this job. I needed the tips the company paid. I have class at 2 p.m., I stammered, a pathetic excuse in the face of the power that building represented. Mr. Vance pays for your hour. And for your class, if necessary, Elias said, already swiping the security card on the elevator panel. The doors opened smoothly. Please, Ms. Silva. He doesn't like to wait. And today is not a good day. I swallowed hard, clutching the thermal bag against my chest like armor. I was wearing my cheap winter coat, boots that had seen better days, and a wool beanie that had probably left my hair a static mess. I didn't belong in that elevator. But curiosity, and the fear of being fired if I refused, made me move my feet. I entered the elevator. Elias did not come in with me. 50th floor, he said before the doors closed. Good luck. The ascent was too fast. My ears popped. I watched the numbers rise on the digital panel, each floor taking me further from my safe reality and closer to the unknown. 30, 40, 48, 50. The doors opened with a soft ding. I expected a busy corporate office, phones ringing, secretaries running. Instead, I found silence. The 50th floor was a vast open space, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a 360-degree view of the snow-covered city. The floor was dark wood, the walls were glass. There was a modern gas fireplace on one wall, but it was off. The place was magnificently designed, the lines, the natural light, the fluidity of the space, but it was tragically empty. In the center of the room, there was a massive black walnut desk. And behind it, his back to me, looking out at the storm outside, was a man. He was tall. Even from behind, the width of his shoulders under the impeccable white shirt was intimidating. He wasn't wearing a jacket, and his sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong, tense forearms. Excuse me, Mr. Vance? My voice came out a whisper, swallowed by the size of the room. He didn't turn immediately. Leave it on the table. His voice was grave, deep, vibrating in my chest. It was the voice of someone accustomed to giving orders and having the universe realign to obey them. I walked toward the table, trying not to make noise with my wet boots on the expensive floor. I placed the thermal bag on the polished wood. That was when I saw it. On the corner of the immaculate desk, there was a small decorative Christmas tree. It was a piece of modern design, made of twisted metal. But it had fallen over. One of the heavy glass ornaments had unbalanced the structure, making it lean sadly to the left. It was a tiny detail in a perfect office, but my architect's brain screamed. The visual tension was unbearable. Without thinking, a terrible habit I had when I was nervous, I reached out my hand. The base is poorly distributed, I murmured to myself, my fingers straightening the metal structure and moving the heavy ornament to the center of gravity. The visual weight needs a counterpoint, otherwise the structure collapses. The tree stood perfectly straight. I breathed a sigh of relief. 2 years. The voice came from very close. I jumped, turning abruptly. Caleb Vance had turned around. And he was much closer than I imagined. The air left my lungs. The photos in magazines did him no justice. They captured the aristocratic bone structure, the strong jaw, and the slightly disheveled dark hair. But the photos didn't capture the eyes. They were Arctic blue, so clear and intense that they seemed to see through the layers of cheap clothes and exhaustion, straight into my soul. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like a predator caged in a glass box. Sorry? I managed to say, my heart beating against my ribs like a trapped bird. He tilted his head, watching my hand which still hovered near the metal tree. "For 2 years you have delivered my lunch," he said slowly, taking a step toward me. 730 days. You arrive at 12:45 p.m. You greet O'Malley. You smile at Jessica, even though she doesn't deserve it. You leave the food and exit exactly at 12:47 p.m. Shock paralyzed me. He knew. He knew the times. He knew my smile. How? And in 2 years, he continued, his voice lowering to an almost intimate tone, you never, not once, asked to come up. You never tried to see who was paying the bill. He stopped a meter away. His scent, sandalwood, black coffee, and something cold like the snow outside, enveloped me. I'm just the delivery girl, Mr. Vance, I whispered, feeling suddenly very small and very exposed. No, he said, and there was a strange hunger in his eyes as he scanned my face, as if confirming a memory. You are Anna Silva. Architecture student, scholarship holder, working double shifts at Sabori Arte. And you just fixed the only thing in this office I tried to fix all morning and failed. He looked at the little metal tree, now perfectly straight, and then looked back at me. Why did you touch it? It was crooked, I defended myself, professional instinct overcoming fear for a second. The structure was in conflict. It caused tension in the environment. One corner of his mouth curved. It wasn't a smile. It was something more dangerous. Tension, he repeated the word, testing it. Yes. There's a lot of tension in this environment, Anna. He stepped away a bit, walking toward the immense glass wall, and gestured to the street down below, where the city was just white and gray blurs. And don't think I haven't seen what you are capable of doing with that tension, he said, his voice becoming husky, almost reverent. I look through this window every day. I see Sabori Arte. In the middle of all this gray and dead concrete, that restaurant is the only thing that shines. I saw you last week, Anna. I saw you balanced precariously on that old wooden ladder, wrapping golden lights on the facade while the snow fell. I saw you transform old bricks into something magical, blown on your hands to warm them and refusing to come down until the last garland was perfectly symmetrical. I saw the warmth you created out there with your own hands. And I decided I need that warmth in here. I was speechless, my face burning. He had seen me. The great Caleb Vance had spent his time watching an architecture student struggling with a wobbly ladder in the snow. He turned from the window, walked to the desk, picked up a thick cream-colored envelope and held it out to me. The company I hired to decorate this building brought silver trash and cold lights. They don't understand structure. They don't have what I saw you put in that restaurant. He took another step, forcing me to take the envelope or let it touch my chest. I took it. You understand structure. You fixed the balance of my table with a touch. And you made that restaurant feel like a home. Mr. Vance, I don't. Open it. I opened the envelope. Inside was a contract. My eyes ran over the numbers and I almost let the paper fall. The value there was enough to pay for my last year of college. Twice over. I need the lobby and this floor decorated by Christmas. And I need the catering for all corporate events in December, he said, crossing his arms, his biceps tensing under the white fabric. I want you to do it. Me? I laughed, a nervous and hysterical sound. Mr. Vance, I'm a student. I deliver risotto. I don't have an events company. You have an eye for balance. And apparently, you are the only person who can enter this building and bring something warm with you. I can't accept this. I have finals, I have my shifts. I'm buying out your shifts, he cut in, implacable. I'm buying your time. From now until December 25th, you don't work for Sabori Arte. You work for me. He leaned on the desk, getting on my level, his blue eyes imprisoning mine. You spent 2 years being invisible down there, Anna. It's over. I'm tired of watching through the cameras and through this window. I want to see what you can do when no one is holding you back. The silence stretched between us, vibrant and heavy. I looked at the contract, at the financial salvation it represented, and then at the man in front of me. The city's Ice King was offering me the key to the kingdom, but the look in his eyes told me that the decorating job was just the excuse. He was inviting me into the cage with him. If I accept, I said, my voice gaining firmness, I do it my way. No micromanagement. And no crooked metal trees. Caleb Vance smiled for real for the first time. And it was terrifying how handsome he became. I would expect nothing less, he murmured. Welcome to the top, Anna. Outside, the snowstorm worsened, erasing the world, leaving us isolated at the top of the glass tower. And I knew, at that moment, that my safe 2-year routine had just been shattered forever. The pen Caleb offered me weighed more than it seemed. It was heavy metal, cold to the touch, a luxury object that probably cost more than the rent for my tiny room. My hand trembled slightly as it hovered over the dotted line of the contract. The cream paper absorbed the black ink as I signed my name, Anna Silva. With that gesture, I wasn't just accepting a temporary job, I was selling my nights, my sleep, and, dangerously, my invisibility. Caleb watched every movement of the pen. He hadn't moved from his position leaning against the desk. The snowstorm lashed against the glass behind him, creating a white halo that made his silhouette look even darker and more imposing. It's done, I whispered, dropping the pen. The metallic sound of it hitting the solid wood echoed like a gunshot in the silence of the room. Caleb picked up the paper. He didn't smile. His expression was intense, predatory, as if he had just closed the most important deal of his career, and not just hired a makeshift Christmas decorator. Elias will process the initial payment. It will hit your account in an hour, he said, putting the document away. That should cover your late tuition fees. My body went cold. I never mentioned I had late tuition fees. I did my homework, Anna. I don't bring strangers into my tower. He pushed off the desk and walked toward me. The space in the office suddenly shrank. I know you are the best in your class in structural design. I know you lost your partial scholarship last semester because of the excess hours at the restaurant. And I know that if you don't pay by January, you don't graduate. Shame and anger fought inside me. It was a flagrant invasion of privacy. But he was right. He was brutally, surgically right. Is this blackmail or charity, Mr. Vance? I asked, raising my chin, refusing to back down. It's an investment, he replied softly, stopping inches from me. So close I could see the golden flecks in his ice blue irises. And I expect a return on my investments. He picked up the landline phone on the desk and dialed a quick number. Speak with Nana, he said into the phone, without taking his eyes off me. Yes. This is Caleb Vance. No, the order was excellent. I'm calling to inform you that I'm hiring Anna Silva full-time until December 26th. Yes, I will cover the costs of her absence and pay a bonus for the inconvenience to the restaurant. Great. Thank you. He hung up. Just like that. He had just reorganized my entire life in 30 seconds. You start now, he decreed. Elias is down below. He will give you the unrestricted access card. You have an unlimited budget for materials, but you have a short deadline. I want the lobby transformed by Monday morning. Monday? That's 3 days. Then I suggest you start running, Anna. You're good at that, aren't you? running against the clock. Without waiting for a reply, he turned and went back to the window, to his lonely vigil over the frozen city. I was dismissed. I left the office with trembling legs, but my mind was already shifting gears. Fear was giving way to something I knew well, the stubborn determination to prove I was capable. He wanted to see what I could do. I would show him. The elevator descended too fast, leaving me in the deserted lobby. It was almost 2 p.m. now. Elias, the nervous assistant, was waiting for me with a black magnetic card and the look of someone who had witnessed a miracle. "Nobody goes up there and comes down with a contract, Miss Silva," he said, handing me the card. "Usually, people come down crying." "He's not a monster, Elias," I replied, tucking the card into the pocket of my faded jeans. "He's just poorly structured. Like this lobby." I looked around, now with the critical eye of someone who had authority to change things. The lobby of Vance Tower was a mausoleum. The triple-height ceiling was impressive, but the black marble and chrome steel sucked up all the light. The current decoration, installed by the company Caleb had fired, was an insult. Thin silver garlands that looked like dead snakes wrapped around the columns. Cold white lights that blinked in an epileptic rhythm. And in the center, a 4-meter artificial tree that looked like it was made of toilet brushes dyed silver. It was cold. It was sterile. It was exactly how Caleb presented himself to the world. "Elias," I called, taking off my coat and throwing it over a Barcelona leather chair. "Where is the power box for these lights?" "In the maintenance room, behind the reception." "Why?" "Because the first rule of architecture is, before you build, you must clear the land." I walked to the central tree. I grabbed one of the cheap-looking silver festoons and pulled. The sound of plastic tearing echoed satisfyingly through the empty lobby. "Are you going to destroy the decoration?" Elias looked horrified. "This isn't decoration." "This is a cry for help," I replied, ripping off another piece. "If Mr. Vance wants warmth, first we need to get rid of the ice." I spent the next 4 hours in a demolition frenzy. I climbed ladders. I tore down the flashing lights that gave me a headache. I dismantled the toilet brush tree branch by branch, piling the silver trash in a corner like a funeral pyre of bad taste. I was sweating, despite the building's freezing air conditioning. My hair escaped from the beanie, falling in messy waves over my face. My arms burned from the physical effort, but my mind was on fire. I visualized the space not as it was, but as it could be. I saw forest green and burgundy velvet flowing down the columns to absorb the echo and bring texture. I saw amber lights, static and soft, mimicking candlelight. I saw a natural tree, a real pine, smelling of the forest, in the center, touching the ceiling. Around 7 p.m., the lobby was bare. Silent. Clean. I sat on the marble floor, surrounded by the wreckage of the old decoration, eating leftovers of cold risotto straight from the lunchbox I hadn't delivered. That was when I felt that sensation again. The feeling of skin crawling, of static electricity on the back of my neck. I slowly looked up toward the mezzanine that circled the second floor. Caleb was there. He was with his hands in his trouser pockets, shirt sleeves still rolled up. He was in the shadows, away from direct light, watching. Exactly like he told me he had been doing for 2 years. But now, there was no glass between us. I swallowed the mouthful of risotto, feeling suddenly conscious of my disheveled appearance, sitting on the floor of his building like an intruder. "You are efficient at destruction," his voice floated down, grave and amused. "Sometimes you have to demolish to renovate, Mr. Vance," I replied, standing up and dusting off my pants. "The gray and silver don't work here. The marble is cold. If we put in cold colors, the environment rejects people. We need earthy tones. Aged gold. Deep red. wood. He descended the stairs slowly. Each of his steps seemed calculated. The sound of his shoes on the marble was the only noise in the building. He stopped before the pile of silver trash I had made. "I paid $50,000 for that last week," he commented, lightly kicking a plastic ornament. "You were robbed, sir," I said honestly. He laughed. It was a low, husky sound that made something vibrate in my stomach. He turned to me. The distance between us closed dangerously again. "And what do I get with you, Anna? Besides a pile of expensive trash and an architecture student who eats on my floor?" "You get a soul for this building, sir," I replied, holding his gaze, even though my legs were trembling from exhaustion and adrenaline. "I'm going to bring a real tree tomorrow. I'll need the maintenance team to turn off the main lights. I want to light this place from the bottom up." Caleb took a step forward, invading my personal space. He reached out his hand and, for a hallucinating second, I thought he was going to touch my face. I thought he was going to wipe away the lock of hair that was stuck to my forehead. Instead, he reached for something behind me, on the reception counter. He picked up the black magnetic card that Elias had given me, but which I had left there while I worked. "You forgot this," he said, his voice low. He took my hand and deposited the card in my palm. His fingers were warm and rough, a shocking contrast to the coldness of the card and the lobby. The touch lasted a second longer than necessary. "This card opens everything, Anna. The lobby. The garage. The private elevator. And my penthouse." I looked at the card, then at him. "Why would I need to enter your penthouse?" "Because the decoration doesn't end in the lobby," he said, his eyes darkening. "My home is as cold as this place. And since you are in the business of saving lost souls, you start up there tomorrow night." He stepped away before I could reply, walking toward the private elevator. "Bring dinner," he called over his shoulder without turning back. "I'm tired of eating alone." The elevator doors closed, taking him back to the sky, and leaving me alone in the empty lobby, with my heart beating out of time and the absolute certainty that decorating his tree would be the easiest part of this contract. The hard part would be not falling in love with the lonely man who lived in its shadows. The smell was the first thing to change. Even before I changed the furniture or the lights, Vance Tower was invaded by the scent. The next morning, I didn't enter through the front door with a discreet thermal bag. I entered through the loading dock, supervising a team of 4 men carrying what Mr. O'Malley, the security guard, called a green monster. It was a Douglas fir nearly 5 meters tall, alive, breathing in smelling of resin, damp earth, and real winter. No plastic. No metal. "This is going to drop needles on the Italian marble floor," Elias whined, walking behind me with a clipboard as we maneuvered the tree into the entrance hall. "Marble floors were made to be swept, Elias," I replied, consulting my inventory list. "Nature is messy. Christmas is messy. If you want aseptic perfection, go to a hospital." I spent the day transforming the lobby. I used heavy fabrics, burgundy velvet and raw linen, to cover the cold metal bases of the tables. I swapped the surgical white bulbs for amber carbon filaments. And when the main tree was erected in the center of the atrium, touching the crystal chandelier high above, the building seemed to sigh. For the first time in 2 years, the echo diminished. The sound was absorbed by the green. The cold air was warmed by the wood. But the real challenge began at 7 p.m. I took the black card from my pocket. My hands were sticky with pine sap and I had a scratch on my cheek caused by a rebel branch, but I didn't have time to compose myself. Caleb had asked for dinner. And Caleb had demanded my presence in the penthouse. I carried the bags from Sabori Arte, creamy polenta with rib ragu and red wine, the most comforting dish Nana made, and entered the private elevator. When the doors opened on the 50th floor, darkness greeted me. The main lights were off. The only illumination came from the glow of the city outside, filtered by the snow that continued to fall, and from the gas fireplace which, to my surprise, was lit. "You're 3 minutes late." Caleb was sitting on a black leather sofa facing the fireplace. He had a glass of whiskey in his hand and was shoeless, his feet resting on the coffee table. The domestic intimacy of the scene made me freeze at the entrance. "The lobby tree fought me," I replied, walking to the seating area. The sound of my boots seemed too loud in that silence. It was big and heavy for so few to carry. "I smelled it when the elevator doors opened on the ground floor," he said, swirling the amber liquid in the glass. "The whole building smells like a forest now." "Is that a complaint?" He turned his head to look at me. The flames from the fireplace danced in his blue eyes, making them less cold, more liquid. "No. It's the first time I've breathed deeply in this place without tasting air conditioning." I placed the food on the glass dining table, which was large enough to seat 12 people but only had one place set. "Where do I put your—" I started to ask, but he stood up. "There," he pointed to the seat at the head of the table. "And your place is to my right." I looked at the table. There were 2 placemats. 2 crystal glasses. Heavy silver cutlery. "I'm the decorator, Mr. Vance. I don't usually dine with the clients." "Caleb," he corrected, walking to the table and pulling out the chair on the right for me. It wasn't a gesture of old-fashioned gallantry, it was a silent order. "And you aren't an ordinary decorator. You are the woman I've watched for 2 years. Sit down." I sat. It was impossible to refuse when he used that tone. His proximity was disturbing. He poured wine for both of us, a dark red that looked like velvet in the glass. I served the polenta. Steam rose, carrying the scent of roasted garlic, rosemary, and slowly cooked meat. It contrasted violently with the modern coldness of the apartment. We ate in silence for a few minutes. I was famished, I hadn't eaten anything all day, but I was conscious of my every move. Caleb, on the other hand, ate with a focused intensity. "Why architecture?" he asked suddenly, putting down his fork. I wiped my mouth with the linen napkin. "Because buildings affect how people feel. You can make someone feel small and scared, or safe and welcomed, just by changing the height of a ceiling or the temperature of the light." I looked around the penthouse. This place, for example. It's a masterpiece of engineering. But it was designed to impress, not to live in. It's a showcase, not a shelter. "It's a fortress," he corrected. "Bulletproof glass. Reinforced structure. No one enters here unless I allow it." "And does that make you feel safe? Or just alone?" The question came out before I could filter it. My eyes widened. I had just psychoanalyzed the billionaire who paid my bills. Caleb wasn't offended. He went quiet, studying me as if I were a complex design enigma. "Safety and solitude are often the same price, Anna," he said softly. "But you are here to change that, aren't you? You brought the forest to my lobby. What did you bring to my house?" He stood up and walked to a corner of the room where several large boxes had been left by Elias, following my purchase instructions. "I brought the past," I replied, standing up too. The wine had given me a bit of courage. I walked to the boxes and opened the first one. "You said you hated Christmas because it was fake," I said, pulling out a string of lights. "But these weren't LED. They were larger bulbs, with a visible filament, the old-fashioned kind. So we aren't going to use anything modern up here. We're going to use what is tactile." I took out garlands of natural pine, not synthetic. Real beeswax candles. And hand-blown glass ornaments, imperfect, heavy. "The fireplace," I pointed. It's the focal point. It needs life. I began to work. Caleb didn't go back to the sofa. He stayed leaning against the wall, his forgotten whiskey glass in hand, watching. I placed the greenery over the fireplace mantel, mixing the dark green with rust-colored velvet ribbons. The smell of pine began to fight with his scent of sandalwood, creating an intoxicating mix. I need to reach the top of the mirror, I murmured, assessing the height. There was a huge mirror above the fireplace. I dragged a heavy chair, but Caleb moved. No, he said, placing his glass on the table. I'll help. He came up behind me. I felt the heat of his body radiate against my back. He was much taller than me. Tell me where to put it, he whispered, his voice near my ear. I took a branch of holly and held it up. He reached his arm over my shoulder, taking the branch from my hand. His chest brushed against my back. My breath hitched. Our hands touched. His skin was warm. There, I pointed, my voice trembling. In the center. He secured the branch. But he didn't step back. We stood there, still, before the mirror. I could see our reflections. Me, small, in work clothes and with flushed cheeks. Him, imposing, white shirt, a tower of strength behind me. He looked at my reflection in the eyes. You have a scent. He began, his nose lightly brushing my hair. You smell like rain and cinnamon. It's maddening. I turned in his arms, becoming trapped between his body and the warm fireplace. The tension of 2 years seemed to have condensed into that single square meter. Caleb, I warned, low. The contract. The contract says I bought your time, he murmured, lowering his gaze to my mouth. It doesn't say what I intend to do with it. He raised his hand and, with his thumb, wiped the pine sap smudge on my cheek. The touch was electric. Rough and gentle at the same time. Decorate my house, Anna, he said, his voice husky, taking a step back, giving me back the air I didn't even know he had stolen. But be careful. If you make this place too comfortable, I might never let you leave. He turned and went to the balcony, into the cold of the snow, leaving me alone before the fireplace, with my heart beating so hard I feared he could hear it from outside. The decoration had begun. And his ice wall was melting faster than I could control. The penthouse tree was already there when I arrived the following night. This time, I didn't need to drag it. The building's logistics team, under Elias's strict orders, had installed a 3-meter Nordmann fir in the corner of the living room, near the glass wall that looked out over the city's skyline. It was bare, green, and imposing, waiting to be dressed. The lobby down below was already almost ready, a symphony of velvet and amber light that made employees stop to take photos, but the penthouse was a different territory. Here, the silence was absolute. Caleb was on a video call when I entered. He was standing near the kitchen island, speaking fluent and rapid French, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was wearing reading glasses, a detail I had never seen in magazines, and looked tired. He looked up when he saw me. Without interrupting the flow of French, he pointed to the coffee table. There was a steaming mug there. Black coffee. And a plate with a croissant from Sabori Arte. He had ordered my favorite for me. I felt a warmth rise up my neck that had nothing to do with the central heating. I left my backpack on the floor and went to the tree, trying to ignore how his deep voice filled the empty space of the apartment. I opened the boxes of ornaments I had brought. Unlike the lobby, where I used robust decorations to fill the massive space, here I chose delicacy. Transparent blown glass. Crystals that would catch the city light. Very fine copper wires with microlights. I began to work, winding the lights into the interior of the tree to create depth. It was a meditative task. Twist, secure, step back, evaluate. You work in absolute silence, Caleb's voice interrupted my thoughts. His call had ended. He took off his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose, and walked to the seating area, stopping right behind the sofa. Music distracts when I'm trying to find the balance, I replied, hanging the first crystal ornament. And you seemed busy buying some small country. It was just a steel negotiation in Lion, he said, rounding the sofa. He stood beside the tree, looking at it with an indecipherable expression. It looks different from the one downstairs. The lobby is public. It needs to be dramatic. Here is your home. It needs to be. I hesitated, holding a very fine glass ball, almost a solid soap bubble. It needs to be breathable. Transparent. I held the box out to him. Help. Caleb looked at the box as if I had offered him a grenade without the pin. I don't decorate, Anna. I pay people. You paid me, I retorted, holding his gaze. And I'm telling you that, for this tree to work, it needs a personal touch. Unless you want it to look like a department store window. He let out an impatient sigh but reached his hand into the box. His fingers, used to signing million-dollar contracts and holding whiskey glasses, seemed too large for the delicate ornaments. He picked up a glass sphere. He held it so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Relax your hand, I instructed, laughing softly. It's not concrete, Caleb. It's glass. If you fight against it, it breaks. If you hold it with gentleness, it shines. He looked at the sphere in his hand, then at me. My life is made of concrete and steel, Anna. Things that withstand pressure. Things that don't break if you squeeze them. Maybe that's why everything here feels so cold, I dared to say. I took a step toward him. Beauty is in fragility. In the risk of breaking. I pointed to a branch at his eye level. Put it there. But don't push. Just let it land. Caleb hesitated. The man who moved skyscrapers was afraid of a Christmas ball. He reached out his hand, stiffly. Caleb, I whispered. Without thinking, I raised my hand and held his wrist. The contact was instantaneous. The skin under my fingers was warm, the pulse beating strong and steady. He froze. I guided his hand to the branch. Let go, I murmured. He opened his fingers. The ornament swayed on the branch, catching the light from the candles I had lit in the fireplace and spinning slowly. He didn't withdraw his hand. And I didn't let go of his wrist. We stood there, connected by the touch, watching the ornament spin. You have small hands, he observed, his voice husky, turning his wrist so his palm met mine. Our hands measured each other. His completely swallowed mine. Artist's hands. Hands that create. And yours? I asked, my breath getting short. Mine are hands that destroy to build, he said, interlacing his fingers with mine. The grip was firm, possessive. I demolished entire neighborhoods to raise this tower. I never had patience for fragile things. Until now. His gaze dropped to my mouth. The air in the room became thin. You should be afraid of me, Anna, he whispered, taking a step forward, forcing me to back down until my back touched the soft branches of the tree. The smell of pine exploded around us. I am a man who spent 2 years obsessed with a woman he had never touched. And now that I've touched. He didn't finish the sentence. He let go of my hand slowly, as if it pained him to do so, and took another ornament from the box. Continue, he ordered, his voice returning to being harsh, turning to the other side of the tree. We have to finish this tonight. Tomorrow I have a business dinner here and I want them to see what you did. We worked the rest of the night in a charged silence. Caleb placed the ornaments where I indicated, learning to soften his touch, learning to deal with fragility. When we finished, I turned off the room lights and turned on the tree. It glowed in the darkness, a constellation of warm lights and transparent glass floating against the backdrop of the snowy city. It was magical. It was the opposite of the man of steel who owned it. Caleb stood beside me, looking at the creation. "It's the most beautiful thing that has ever entered this building," he said. I smiled, proud of my work. Organic architecture always wins. I wasn't talking about the tree, Anna. I turned my head and caught him looking at me, not at the lights. The intensity on his face made my knees weak. Before I could respond, his phone rang shrilly, breaking the spell. He answered, the CEO mask falling back into place instantly. "Vance." "What?" "No. Cancel it." I said no. I took advantage of the distraction to grab my bag and my coat. I needed to get out of there. The gravity of that apartment was getting too strong, and I felt that if I stayed one more minute, I would be sucked into his orbit and never be able to leave again. "Good night, Mr. Vance," I whispered, heading for the elevator while he shouted orders in English into the phone. He turned when the doors were closing. He didn't wave. He just watched me leave, with his hand still hovering over one of the fragile ornaments we had hung together, as if he were protecting it from falling. It was 2 a.m. and Vance Tower was silent, except for the sound of my marker scratching the project paper and the distant hum of the central ventilation. I was sitting on the lobby floor of the executive floor, the 49th floor, surrounded by fabric samples, layout sketches for the gala, and empty energy drink cans. The deadline for the Christmas Eve party was approaching like a runaway train, and the scale of the event was larger than anything I had ever attempted. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the grit of exhaustion under my eyelids. My back ached from being hunched over the drawings. I needed caffeine, but the ground floor coffee shop had been closed for hours and the machine on the floor was broken. "You're going to punch a hole in the paper if you keep pressing the pen with that much force." The voice came from the shadows of the corridor leading to the private elevator. I didn't jump this time. I was starting to recognize the vibration frequency of his footsteps before I even heard them. Caleb emerged from the gloom. He had abandoned his tie and jacket. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar and the sleeves were rolled up haphazardly, revealing strong forearms. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man who, like me, couldn't turn off his brain. He was holding 2 mugs. The smell of freshly brewed coffee floated to me, more seductive than any expensive perfume. "I thought vampires slept in glass coffins at this hour," I murmured, accepting the mug he offered me. "Vampires don't drink dark roast Arabica," he replied, sitting on the floor beside me. Not in a chair. On the floor. His long legs stretched out beside my crossed denim-clad legs. The proximity was dizzying. I took a sip. The coffee was perfect. Strong, hot, no sugar. Exactly what I needed. "You're working too hard," he observed, picking up one of my sketches. It was a drawing of the ballroom lighting. "Is this for the party?" "Yes. I want to create a ceiling of fake stars using fiber optics and velvet curtains to lower the ceiling height. The space is too impersonal. I need to make 600 people feel like they're in a living room, not an airport hangar." Caleb studied the drawing with an intensity that made me nervous. "You have a terrifying talent for seeing what isn't there," he said, handing back the paper. "You see warmth where only a vacuum exists. It's my job. To fill voids." "And your void, Anna?" he asked softly. "Who fills it?" The question was so personal I almost dropped the coffee. I looked at him. He was watching me with that Arctic blue hunger, the same I had seen in the penthouse. "I don't have time for voids. I study, work, and try not to fail structures too." I tried to laugh to lighten the mood. My life is too full of deadlines to fit in drama. He reached out and, with an almost imperceptible touch, pulled back a lock of my hair that had escaped the messy bun. You let your hair grow, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. In March of last year, you cut it at chin height. It looked good, it highlighted your neck, but you looked sad. You used your hair like a curtain to hide yourself. The air left my lungs. Time stopped. March of last year. I had cut my hair after my mother was briefly hospitalized and I had to sell my car to pay the bills. I was devastated. I felt exposed and vulnerable, so I cut my hair on an impulse of control. But I never went up to his office last March. I never spoke to him. I was just the delivery girl who left the bag at reception and left in 2 minutes. How? My voice failed. How do you know that? How do you know when I cut my hair? Or how I felt? Caleb didn't back away. He didn't try to disguise it or make up an excuse about having happened to notice. He held my gaze, brutally honest. I told you I've been watching you for 2 years, Anna. I didn't mean I saw you pass by a few times. I meant I saw you every day. He leaned forward, invading my space, his voice lowering to a husky, confessional tone. I know that on Tuesdays you arrive running because you have lab class before. I know that when it rains, you protect the delivery bag with your own body, not the umbrella, because you care more about the product than yourself. I know that last March you stopped smiling at O'Malley for 3 weeks. And I know that when you cut your hair, you rubbed the back of your neck nervously while you waited for the service elevator. I was paralyzed. A mixture of fear and an overwhelming attraction ran through my veins. This bordered on obsession. It was dangerous. And, God help me, it was the most intense thing anyone had ever felt for me. You were watching me, I whispered. Through cameras? Through the lobby cameras. Through my office window. Sometimes. He hesitated, looking away for a second, revealing a rare vulnerability. Sometimes I went down to the mezzanine just to hear your voice when you spoke to the receptionist. Why? He looked back at me. The pain in his eyes was palpable. Because my life is silent, Anna. It's made of numbers, steel, and people who want something from me. You were the only thing in my routine that was real. You were constant. You were alive. I adjusted my international meeting schedule just to ensure I was free at 12:45 p.m. Just to see you walk in. I pulled back slightly, my back hitting the leg of the coffee table. This was too much. It was too heavy for a Tuesday morning. This is insane, Caleb. It is, he readily agreed. It's completely irrational. But you're here now. On my floor. Drinking my coffee. And I don't have to watch through a screen anymore. He held my chin, forcing me to look at him. His touch was warm, firm, possessive. Do you think I hired you for the decoration? He laughed, a dry sound. I could have hired the best firm in Paris. I hired you because I couldn't stand another day without having an excuse to talk to you. To find out if the sadness of last March had gone away. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. I should run. I should grab my sketches and run out of that building and never come back. He was too powerful, too intense. But then he stroked my cheek with his thumb, a gesture so tender it disarmed my whole defense system. Tell me to stop, he whispered. Tell me this scares you and that you want to leave. I'll let you go. I'll pay for your college and I'll never look at you again. I held my breath. The exit was right there. The emergency door. I looked at his face, at the loneliness etched in the lines around his eyes, at the desperate hope he tried to hide behind the arrogance. I don't want to leave, I confessed, my voice trembling. Caleb's eyes darkened, the pupils dilating until they swallowed the blue. Then don't go, he growled softly. Because if you stay, Anna, I won't be satisfied with just watching. I'm going to want everything. The silence that followed was no longer empty. It was full of dangerous promises. I drank the rest of the coffee, feeling that I had just signed a second contract, much riskier than the first. The contract that said I was no longer the girl he watched. I was the girl he intended to keep. Wednesday morning brought sun, but it was that lying winter sun, bright, blinding, and incapable of melting a single snowflake. I was at the top of a 3-meter ladder in the center of the lobby, adjusting the centerpiece of the decoration, a cascade of live ivy interlaced with crimson velvet ribbons that descended down the railing of the grand staircase. The building had changed. What was once a mausoleum of cold echo now seemed alive. The smell of fresh pine and beeswax had replaced the smell of ozone. The employees, who used to walk with their heads down, now stopped to admire the lights. I saw smiles. I saw life. I felt proud. And, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like just the delivery girl. I felt like the architect I was born to be. Is that rustic thing going to stay there? The voice cut the air like a blade. It wasn't grave like Caleb's, nor neutral like the employees'. It was a feminine voice, high-pitched, polished, and laden with disdain. I looked down. At the foot of the ladder, standing like a dissatisfied queen in her kingdom, was a woman. She wore a white fur coat, probably real, over a designer dress. Perfect blonde hair, impeccable makeup, and a posture that screamed old money. I recognized her from the gossip magazines Nana read at the restaurant. Isabella Ricci. Daughter of one of the city's biggest investors, a board member of Vance Developments and, according to rumors, the woman the society expected Caleb to marry one day. I descended 2 rungs of the ladder, wiping my hands on my work apron dirty with gold dust. Good morning, I said, keeping my voice professional. The rustic thing is a biophilic design concept. It brings nature indoors to reduce stress and increase well-being in the corporate environment. Isabella took off her sunglasses slowly, revealing cold brown eyes that scanned me as if I were a stain on the Persian rug. I know what design is, dear. I studied in Milan, she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But this here looks like someone vomited a forest inside a steel building. It's dirty. She reached out a gloved hand and touched one of the ivy leaves with disgust. Where is Mr. Vance? I need to know who approved this disaster before the gala. Mr. Vance approved it, I replied, stepping down to the floor. I was shorter than her, and my work boots looked ridiculous next to her Louboutin heels, but I didn't back down. And the concept was mine. Isabella laughed. It was a dry and cruel sound. Oh, yes. Elias told me. She took a step forward, invading my space with her cloying scent of expensive roses. You're the kitchen girl, aren't you? The one who brings the lunch boxes. The blow hit home. My architect pride wavered. Suddenly, the contract or the talent didn't matter. To her, I was just the servant who was playing at decorating. I was hired as designer and event coordinator for this season, I corrected, my voice turning tense. Temporary, she emphasized the word. You're a temporary attraction, like a circus. Caleb has these whims. Sometimes he likes to play charity. But don't delude yourself, dear. When the Christmas lights go out, you go back to the kitchen and we go back to serious business. She turned to the large tree that Caleb and I had set up in the lobby, the second one, not the penthouse one. That's crooked, she pointed to a perfectly placed ornament. Change it. And take that ivy off the stairs. I want Swarovski crystal garlands. I'll have them delivered this afternoon. The design isn't going to change, I stated, feeling my face heat up with anger. The contract gives me creative autonomy. Isabella spun on her heels, eyes flashing. You think a piece of paper gives you power here? I'm on the board. My father owns 20% of this building. If I say to take the weeds off the stairs, you take the weeds off, or I guarantee you won't even get a job cleaning bathrooms in the city. She snapped her fingers, pointing to a box of ornaments on the floor. Now, be a good girl and start dismantling this before Caleb comes down and sees the mess. My hands clenched into fists. Humiliation burned in my throat. I wanted to scream, I wanted to throw the contract in her face, but the threat to my professional future was real. People like Isabella had the power to destroy careers before they even began. I bent down to pick up the box, feeling tears of rage sting my eyes. I wasn't going to cry in front of her. I wouldn't give her that pleasure. Stand up, Anna. The voice thundered through the lobby, stopping the traffic of employees and making silence fall like an anvil. Caleb. He was coming out of the executive elevators. He wasn't walking, he was marching. The expression on his face was terrifying. There was none of the warmth he showed me last night. There was only cutting ice and contained fury. Isabella smiled, instantly changing her posture to something seductive and soft. Caleb, darling. I was just trying to help this poor girl. The design was a bit amateurish, and I suggested some crystals to elevate the level for the... Caleb passed her without even looking. He came straight to me. He held my arms gently, making me drop the box and stand up. He examined my face, looking for signs of crying, his blue eyes scanning every inch of my expression. Did she hurt you? He asked low, only for me to hear. No, I whispered. Just my pride. He nodded, let go of my arms, and turned slowly to Isabella. He placed himself between me and her, a human barrier of expensive suit and broad shoulders. Isabella, he said, his voice deceptively calm. What are you doing in my building? I came to see the preparations for the gala, she replied, losing some of her smile but maintaining the arrogance. And thank God I came. Caleb, this decoration is too country. I was explaining to your employee that we need something more sophisticated. You were giving orders to my creative director, Caleb corrected, his voice hardening. Director of... Isabella laughed, nervously. Caleb, please. It's the girl from the restaurant. Elias told me. Anna Silva, Caleb said my name as if it were a title of nobility, is the architect responsible for transforming this mausoleum into something habitable. She has total autonomy. Her word on the aesthetics of this building is above mine. And it is, definitely, light years above yours. Isabella's face turned pale under the makeup. I'm on the board, Caleb. I have a right to give an opinion. You're on the financial board. You give opinions on spreadsheets. He took a step toward her, the threat radiating from him in waves. If you insult Anna again, if you even look at her with that air of superiority, I'll buy your father's shares by lunch and kick you off the board before dinner. Test me, Isabella. I'm looking for an excuse. The whole lobby was listening. The humiliation had shifted sides. Isabella opened and closed her mouth, looking like a fish out of water. But, the gala. She tried, her voice weak. The gala will be exactly as Anna planned, Caleb declared, looking around to ensure all the employees heard. With ivy, wood, and soul. If you prefer cold and empty crystals, Isabella, stay home and look in the mirror. He pointed to the revolving door. Get out. Now. Isabella looked at me with pure hate, then at Caleb with disbelief. She adjusted her fur coat with trembling hands and marched to the exit, the sound of her heels sounding like retreat shots. When she left, Caleb turned to me. The fury vanished from his eyes, replaced by intense concern. "Are you okay? You just threatened to buy her father's company because of a garland," I said, still in shock. "It wasn't for the garland," he replied, taking my dust-covered hand and bringing it to his lips, kissing my knuckles in front of the entire lobby. "It was for you. Nobody makes you feel small in my presence, Anna. Nobody." I felt the looks from the employees, the security guard, the receptionist. There was no more secret. The kitchen girl wasn't just a temporary employee. And the Ice King wasn't just being a good boss. "Back to work, everyone," Caleb said loudly to the lobby, without letting go of my hand. "Anna, come with me. We need to discuss the guest list." Apparently, I've just opened a spot at the head table. As I followed him to the elevator, I squeezed his hand back. Isabella was wrong. I wasn't temporary. From the force with which Caleb held me, I was starting to believe I could be permanent. If I thought decorating the lobby alone was hard, managing the army Caleb placed at my disposal was terrifying. On Thursday morning, the lobby of Vance Tower no longer looked like a corporate building. It looked like the backstage of a Broadway production. There were thick cables snaking across the marble floor, hydraulic scaffolding rising to the ceiling, and the smell of coffee mixed with fresh sawdust and cut flowers. Elias was by my side, holding a tablet and looking, for the first time, like he was having fun. "Mr. Vance has authorized the hiring of 3 specialized teams, Ms. Silva," he announced, pointing to the distinct groups of workers. "Alpha team for lighting and electrical. Beta team for carpentry and structural assembly. And Gamma team," he pointed to a group of people with green aprons, "are the best florists in the city, temporarily stolen from the botanical garden." I took a deep breath, adjusting the tool belt I was wearing over my jeans, a tape measure, a walkie-talkie, and markers. The delivery girl was gone. The architect needed to take command. "Right," I said, my voice firm despite the butterflies in my stomach. "Let's put them to work." I walked to the center of the chaos. I clapped my hands twice, the sound echoing and making heads turn. "Good morning, everyone," I began, projecting my voice like I learned in college project presentations. "My name is Anna. I'm responsible for the design. We have 48 hours to transform this place into something that makes people forget they're in an office building and think they've stepped into an enchanted winter forest." I pointed to the lighting team lead, a stocky man named Marcus, who was looking at me with skepticism. "Marcus, right? I need your team to go up the scaffolding. I want to create a fiber optic canopy in the atrium ceiling. Density of 60 points per square meter. Color temperature 2700 Kelvin. I want it to look like a starry sky, not a laboratory." Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised at the precise technical specification. 2700 K? It's going to be very yellowish. It's going to be cozy, I corrected. The marble here is blue-gray. If we use white light, the environment dies. If we use 2700 K, the marble warms up and glows. Trust me." He nodded, a reluctant respect appearing in his eyes. "Right, boss. Let's go up." I turned to the florists. "Elena," I called the leader, a woman with calloused and gentle hands. "No round and perfect arrangements. I want organic. I want the ivy to look like it has grown on the columns over decades. Use moss at the base of the trees. And I want white camellias mixed with the dark foliage for contrast." "And the smell?" Elena asked. "Eucalyptus and cinnamon hidden in the foliage. Subtle, but present. Lastly, the carpentry team. You are going to build the stage for the buffet. But I don't want rectangular tables with white cloths. I want rustic, uneven wood, like a refined medieval banquet. Use the walnut planks I requested. The lobby exploded in activity. The sound of drills, the screech of hydraulic elevators, and the shouts of coordination filled the air. I was everywhere at once. Climbing ladders to check angles, approving fabric samples, correcting the position of a spotlight. It was exhausting, chaotic, and absolutely exciting. I was conducting an orchestra of construction. Around noon, I felt that familiar sensation of being watched. I looked up to the glass mezzanine on the second floor. Caleb wasn't there. I looked toward the entrance. He was leaning against a column, away from the confusion, with his arms crossed. But he wasn't alone. He was with two men in suits, investors or clients, judging by the leather briefcases. They were talking to Caleb, but Caleb wasn't looking at them. He was looking at me. There was a proud and dangerous smile playing on his lips as he watched me give orders to an electrician twice my size. I walked to them, wiping the dust off my hands. "Mr. Vance," I greeted, professional. "We are on schedule." The two investors looked at me with curiosity. I was in dirty boots, jeans, and a black t-shirt, with a pencil stuck in my messy bun. Not exactly the corporate image of Vance Developments. "Gentlemen," Caleb said, uncrossing his arms and placing a possessive hand on the small of my back, ignoring the dust on my clothes. "This is Anna Silva. The mind behind the transformation you are seeing. And the reason this year's gala will be unforgettable." "It's an ambitious project," one of the men commented, looking up at the ceiling where the stars were being installed. "Very different from the company's usual style." "The company is evolving," Caleb replied, his eyes fixed on mine. "We're learning that structure without soul has no value." He turned to me, ignoring the men for a moment. "How is the team?" "Efficient." Marcus questioned the light temperature but understood the logic. "Elena is an artist." I hesitated. "But we have a problem with the buffet." "Which one?" "The building's kitchen is too industrial. Sabori Arte doesn't have enough staff to serve 600 people at this level of complexity. I need reinforcements in the kitchen, but I need people who cook with love, not catering robots." Caleb picked up the walkie-talkie that was on my belt, his fingers brushing my waist, sending an electric shock down my spine. He pressed the button. "Elias?" "Yes, Mr. Vance." "Hire the entire morning shift team from Sabori Arte. Pay triple. And bring 3 sous chefs from my favorite restaurants in the city to work under Nana's supervision. Anna says we need love in the food, so let's buy the best love available on the market." He released the button and replaced the radio on my belt, the gesture intimate and functional at the same time. "Resolved," he said. "Anything else, boss?" I blushed at the title. "No. Just, get out of my way, Mr. Vance. You're standing exactly where the hot chocolate station is going to be." The investors gasped at my audacity. Nobody spoke like that to Caleb Vance. But Caleb just laughed. He stepped back, raising his hands in surrender. "Your orders are absolute down here, Anna. I'm just the guy who signs the checks." He walked away with the investors, but before entering the elevator, he looked back. I was back in the center of the hurricane, pointing to the ceiling, commanding the light. I was no longer the invisible girl. I had a team, I had a budget, and I had the absolute confidence of the most powerful man in the room. And for the first time in my life, I felt like the glass ceiling above me wasn't a barrier, but a window to the sky I was about to light up. It was 3 a.m. when Vance Tower finally fell silent. Alpha, Beta, and Gamma teams had left hours ago, leaving behind a trail of sawdust, cut wires, and the skeletal structure of what would be the most magnificent event of the decade. But I was still there. I was perched at the top of a 4-meter scaffold, manually adjusting the angle of a reflector that insisted on overlighting the marble, creating a harsh glare instead of the soft moonlight I had promised. My shoulders screamed in pain. My fingers were rough and with small cuts from handling copper wires. My eyes burned. But the perfectionist in me, the architect who knew that light defines space, refused to come down until it was perfect. A bit more to the left, I muttered to myself, turning the reflector's wing. Soften the shadow. Create mystery. If you fall from there, my insurance doesn't cover damage caused by excessive stubbornness. The voice came from below, rich and amused. I looked down through the metal bars of the scaffold. Caleb was there, standing in the center of my rustic wooden stage. He had changed his impeccable dress shirt for a black cotton t-shirt that hugged his chest and gray sweatpants. He looked accessible, human, and irritatingly rested. He was holding two things, a bottle of cold water and a familiar thermal bag. I'm stuck, I lied, wiping the sweat from my forehead with the back of my dirty hand. I'm going to live up here now. The ecosystem is better. Fewer bossy billionaires. Come down, Anna, he asked, and this time it wasn't a CEO's order, but a soft request. You've been up there for 40 minutes adjusting the same light. It's perfect. You, on the other hand, look like you're going to faint. I sighed, defeated by exhaustion. He was right. I locked the reflector and began the descent. My muscles trembled with the effort of holding the bars. When I reached the last steps, my legs failed momentarily. I didn't hit the floor. Strong arms wrapped around me before my boots touched the marble. Caleb caught me by the waist, lifting me off the scaffold as if I weighed the same as one of the glass ornaments. For a hallucinating moment, I hung there, with my face at the level of his, my feet dangling in the air, my hands resting on his broad shoulders to balance myself. His scent, sandalwood and now fresh soap from having showered, invaded my senses, overlapping the smell of sawdust. I have you, he murmured, his blue eyes fixed on mine, dark in the lobby's gloom. I told you I wouldn't let you fall. He put me on the floor slowly, sliding my body against his, a friction that ignited every nerve ending I had. But he didn't let go immediately. His hands remained on my waist, his thumbs making soft circles on the fabric of my t-shirt, massaging the lower back tension. Thank you, I whispered, breathless. He pulled away reluctantly and gestured to the wooden stage where he had placed the thermal bag. Sit down. Delivery for Ms. Silva. I dragged myself to the edge of the stage and sat, letting my legs hang. Caleb opened the thermal bag. This is... I began to laugh, incredulous. Inside were containers from Sabori Arte. But not just anything. It was my favorite order, the one I ate hidden in the kitchen after double shifts, sweet potato gnocchi with sage butter. How? I asked. The kitchen is closed. I have the key to the city, remember? He sat beside me, opening the container and handing me a plastic fork. I called Nana on her personal cell. She said you needed comfort fuel. You woke up a 70-year-old Italian lady at 3 a.m. to make gnocchi for me? I'd wake up the Pope if he made better gnocchi, he replied, opening his own lunchbox, the usual ragu. Eat. We ate side by side in the silent lobby, illuminated only by the fiber optic stars I had spent hours installing. The atmosphere was magical. The amber light reflected on the wood, the ivy leaves, transforming the cold steel into something golden. For 2 years, Caleb said, breaking the silence, you fed me. You brought warmth in a bag while I stayed up there, freezing in the air conditioning. Today, I return the favor. He pointed his fork to the starry ceiling. Do you know what the construction team said today? That I'm bossy? They said they've never seen this building look like a place where humans work. They said it breathed. He turned to me. My father built this tower to be a monument to efficiency. He used to say that comfort made people lazy. He was wrong, I countered, mouth full. Discomfort makes people want to leave. Comfort makes them want to stay, invest, create. I know, Caleb said softly. He put the food aside and, without warning, took my left hand. He turned my palm up, tracing with his thumb the red lines and small cuts on my fingers caused by manual labor. Your hands are hurt. Waking up in Caleb Vance's penthouse was like waking up inside a cloud trapped inside a diamond. The morning light entered filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting on the snow that covered the city down below and filling the guest room with a diffuse and unreal white. The sheets were Egyptian cotton of a thread count so high they felt like liquid silk against my skin. For a moment, I forgot who I was. I forgot the debts, the cold, the smell of frying from the restaurant impregnated in my usual clothes. I was just warm. Safe. Then the memory of the previous night returned. The hand massage. The invitation. His look. I jumped up. I was wearing one of his t-shirts that he had lent me to sleep in, which reached my knees and smelled of him, and my underwear. I looked for my work clothes, the faded jeans and the sawdust-dirty flannel, expecting to find them in some corner. They had disappeared. In their place, on the velvet armchair in the corner of the room, there was a matte black box, elegant, with a note on top written in an angular and firm hand, for the architect. See. I opened the box. The tissue paper rustled, revealing not just clothes, but a statement of intent. It was a modern tailoring set, with fine and precise cuts, exactly the kind of clothes I dreamed of wearing when I graduated and had my own office. A pair of high-waisted pants in black cool wool, with a straight and impeccable drape. A silk blouse in a cream tone, with a geometric and sophisticated cut at the neckline. And a structured charcoal gray blazer, modern, versatile, with architectural lines that screamed professionalism and power. Beside it, there was a pair of black Italian leather boots, a comfortable block heel, perfect for someone who spends the day on their feet but doesn't want to lose elegance. I put on the clothes. The fit was hauntingly perfect, as if they had been made to measure for my body. Looking at myself in the full-length mirror, I didn't see the tired delivery girl. I saw a businesswoman. I saw the creative director Caleb said I was. The outfit was armor, and I felt invincible in it. I took a deep breath, adjusting the blazer, and left the room following the smell of coffee. I found Caleb in the open kitchen. He was with his back to me, leaning on the marble counter, looking at the tablet. He was wearing dark sweatpants and a fitted gray t-shirt. His feet were bare. His hair was damp, as if he had just stepped out of the shower. The domesticity of the scene hit me. He didn't look like the titan of industry. He looked mine. Good morning, my voice came out firmer than I expected, perhaps the effect of the new blazer. He turned slowly. His gaze traveled over my body, from the boots to the blazer, lingering on the silk blouse. His blue eyes darkened with approval. Good morning, he replied, pushing a cup of coffee toward me. It fit well. I imagined that symmetry and structure were important for your wardrobe as well. Did you guess my size? I asked, accepting the coffee. I'm good with measurements, Anna. It's my job. There was a double meaning there that made my stomach turn. I walked to the living room, feeling confident, drawn by the tree we had decorated. In the daylight, it was even more beautiful. Fragile, transparent, ethereal. But something on Caleb's personal work desk, which was in a niche near the library, caught my attention. The desk was a vast expanse of ebony wood, organized with military precision. A state-of-the-art laptop. A leather notepad. A Mont Blanc fountain pen. And, resting on a small black velvet stand, the kind used to display rare jewelry or watches, was something that didn't belong there. It was a blue ballpoint pen. Cheap plastic. The kind you buy in packs of 10 for $2. The cap was bitten, the plastic chewed with nervous tooth marks. I approached, frowning. The contrast was absurd. The pen looked like trash, but it was displayed as a sacred artifact. "Caleb?" I called, without taking my eyes off the object. "Why do you have a chewed-up Bic on a velvet stand?" The silence behind me was heavy. I heard his steps approach, soft on the carpet. "Don't touch it," he said, his voice strangely tense. I turned around. He was standing a meter away, looking at the pen with an expression I couldn't decipher. Possessiveness? Shame? Is it an inside joke? I asked. "Some billion-dollar contract you signed with a bad pen for luck?" "No," he said softly. He went around the desk and stood beside me, looking at the cheap plastic object. "You dropped it." I frowned. "What?" 14 months ago, he began, his voice distant, as if he were reciting a biblical passage. "It was a rainy Tuesday. You were late. You ran to the reception counter, signed the delivery log in a hurry. You were stressed, murmuring about a strength of materials exam." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple moving up and down. "You put the pen behind your ear, turned to leave, and it fell. You didn't notice. You got into the service elevator and left." My heart began to beat out of time under the new silk blouse. I looked at the pen again. The tooth marks. I had the horrible habit of biting the caps of pens when I was anxious studying. You went down and picked my pen up off the floor?" I whispered, incredulous. "I waited for the lobby to empty," he corrected, his eyes fixed on the blue plastic. "I went down. O'Malley asked me if I had lost something. I said no. I bent down and picked it up." He looked at me now, the blue intensity burning any barrier that remained between us. "I brought it up. I put it on my desk. And on the nights when I felt like I was drowning in numbers and loneliness, I looked at it. At your tooth marks." He reached out his hand and traced the air above the pen, without touching it. "It's the only thing of yours I could have without stealing. It's the only physical proof that you existed in my world, and not just in my head." I stepped back a bit, my back hitting the bookshelf. This wasn't just attraction. This wasn't just an office crush. This was a profound, almost painful devotion, built in the silence of 2 years. "This is..." I began, not knowing whether to say Lindo or assustador. "Obsessive," he completed, a sad smile curving his lips. "Paytic?" "Yes. I'm the man who can buy anything in New York, Anna. But the most valuable thing in this apartment is a 50-cent plastic pen, because your mouth touched it." He approached, cornering me against the books. He rested his hands on the shelf, one on each side of my head, trapping me in his orbit. "Now do you understand?" he whispered, leaning in until our noses almost touched. "You aren't just here to decorate Christmas. You're here because I'm tired of looking at the pen. I want the woman who held it." The smell of coffee and mint from his breath mixed with mine. My legs trembled, but the firm fabric of the tailored pants gave me support. The gravity of the situation hit me. He wasn't going to let me leave on the 26th. He never planned to let me go. "Caleb," I breathed, my hands rising instinctively to his chest, feeling his heart beating hard through the thin t-shirt. "What happens if I'm not who you imagined?" "I'm messy. I eat cold pasta. I bite pens." "You are perfect," he murmured, brushing his lips against my forehead, then my temple, descending dangerously. "You are the structural flaw that will bring down my defenses. And I can't wait to collapse." The moment was about to break. The kiss was inevitable, magnetic, a disaster about to happen. BZZZZZT. The intercom on the wall buzzed, loud and hateful. Caleb closed his eyes, letting out a low and guttural swear word. He didn't pull away immediately. He stayed there for another second, breathing my air, lamenting the interruption. Mr. Vance, Elias's voice crackled over the speaker. Sorry to bother you at the residence, but Ms. Ricci is in the lobby with her mother. And they brought lawyers. Caleb pulled away, the mask of coldness falling over his face like a steel shutter, hiding the vulnerable man who kept chewed-up pens. Don't let them up, he ordered the air, walking toward the intercom. I'm coming down. He turned to me at the kitchen door, looking at my new outfit with a fierce smile. Stay here. Drink your coffee. You're dressed to kill, Anna, but I prefer to clear the battlefield before you come down. Nobody messes with my architect. He left, leaving me alone with the stunning view, the cooling coffee, and a blue Big Pen that was worth more than the whole building to the man who had just left. Caleb told me to stay in the tower, to wait while he cleared the battlefield. But as I finished my cold coffee, looking at the chewed-up Big Pen on the velvet stand, something inside me clicked. The pen was a symbol of who I was before, the anxious student, the invisible delivery girl, the girl who bit plastic caps out of nervousness. I looked at my reflection in the window glass. The charcoal gray blazer structured my shoulders. The tailored pants elongated my posture. The Italian boots gave me height and firmness. I was no longer that girl with the pen. I was the woman who had transformed an ice mausoleum into a living forest. I was the architect responsible for the biggest event of the year. And architects don't hide when the structure is tested. They inspect the flaw. I left the cup in the sink. I took the black access card. Elias, I called through the wall intercom. Ms. Silva? Mr. Vance asked for. I know what he asked. Call the elevator. I'm coming down. There was a hesitant pause. The atmosphere in the lobby is unstable, miss. Good. Because I'm a specialist in stabilizing structures. When the elevator doors opened on the ground floor, the lobby looked like a makeshift courtroom. The decorating team had stopped working. Marcus and his electricians were watching from atop the scaffolding. Elena and the florists were watching from behind the ivy columns. The silence was tense, broken only by the sound of raised voices near the reception. Caleb was there, a wall with his back to me, blocking access to the elevators. On the other side, Isabella Ricci looked triumphant. But she was just a pawn. The real threat was beside her. An older woman, sitting in one of the velvet armchairs I had installed, radiated a ghoulish authority. She wore a gray fur coat and held a silver-topped cane, although she didn't seem to need it. Elena Ricci, the matriarch of the board. And behind them, 3 men in dark suits with briefcases, the lawyers. Clear violation of corporate image protocols, Caleb. Ms. Ricci's voice was soft but cutting. You've turned the headquarters of a Fortune 500 company into a craft fair. The shareholders are concerned about the message this sends. The message is one of innovation and humanity, Elena, Caleb replied, his voice dangerously calm. Something the board forgot years ago. And handing the gala budget to an amateur? One of the lawyers intervened, consulting a paper. A student with no license, no liability insurance, no track record? That is fiduciary negligence, Mr. Vance. If there is an accident, a fire with all this wood and fabric, the company will be destroyed. This is a level 1 security risk, Isabella added, smiling. We are here to enjoy the work. The decoration must be removed before the event. Caleb took a step forward. I saw his fists clench at his sides. Nobody touches anything. We have an injunction, Caleb, Ms. Ricci said, standing up slowly. Either you remove this flammable trash, or the board will vote on a motion of no confidence in your leadership tomorrow morning. Caleb opened his mouth to roar, but I was faster. My new heels hit the marble with a crisp, authoritative sound, clack. 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 Flammable trash? I asked, projecting my voice through the lobby. Every head turned. Caleb looked back, his eyes widening for a fraction of a second when he saw me coming toward them, dressed in the armor he had given me. His shock was quickly replaced by an intense glow of pride. I walked until I was beside Caleb. Not behind him. Beside him. Who are you? Ms. Ricci asked, narrowing her eyes. Anna Silva, I replied, holding out my hand to the lawyer holding the clipboard. The architect responsible for the project. May I see that risk assessment? The lawyer, caught off guard by my confidence, handed me the paper. I read it quickly. It was standard legal nonsense, trying to use fear to force a decision. I laughed, handing back the paper. This is embarrassing, I commented, looking at Isabella. For you. How dare you, Isabella began. Your lawyers cite the Article 4 Fire Prevention Code, I interrupted, my voice firm. Which prohibits untreated combustible materials in public circulation areas. What they forgot to verify is that all the velvet used here is Class A fire rated. The stage wood was treated with certified intumescent varnish, which resists flames for up to 120 minutes. I pointed to Marcus on the scaffolding. The lighting is low-voltage LED with individual heat sinks, installed by a licensed team under the supervision of an electrical engineer who signed the art yesterday afternoon. I turned to Ms. Ricci, holding her cold gaze. I pulled all the permits at City Hall 3 days ago, Ms. Ricci. The fire chief inspected the site today at 8 a.m. and praised the compliance. Your lawyers are threatening to enjoin work that exceeds the city's safety standards. I took a step forward, crossing my arms, feeling the fabric of my new blazer stretch comfortably. As for corporate message, I continued, social media engagement for Vance Developments has gone up 400% since photos of the lobby leaked yesterday. The public doesn't see a craft fair. They see a cold company that finally found a heart. To cancel this now would be the real PR disaster. And that, yes, would be fiduciary negligence. The lobby fell into absolute silence. Caleb was looking at me as if I had just invented the wheel. Or as if he wanted to kiss me right then and there. Ms. Ricci looked at the lawyer. Is that true? The permits? The lawyer, breaking into a cold sweat, checked his phone. It seems that, yes. There is a digital record in the City Hall system. Isabella stomped her foot. Mother. Are you going to let this delivery girl talk to us like this? Ms. Ricci raised her hand, silencing her daughter. She looked me up and down, evaluating the cut of my clothes, the firmness of my posture. You don't look like a delivery girl today, Ms. Silva, she conceded, cold as ice. It seems Caleb has expensive taste. She turned to Caleb. You won this round. The gala goes on. But if a single ivy leaf falls into an investor's drink, her head and yours will be on a platter. We'll be waiting, Caleb replied, with a shark-like smile. Ms. Ricci made a signal to the entourage. They retreated, Isabella casting a last poisonous look at me before leaving through the revolving door. When they vanished, the tension in the lobby broke. Marcus whistled from the scaffold. Elena clapped. Caleb turned to me. The intensity in his eyes was overwhelming. I told you to stay in the tower, he murmured, taking my hand and interlacing our fingers. I'm not Rapunzel, Caleb, I replied, feeling the adrenaline begin to drop and my legs tremble slightly. I don't need to be saved. I need to be a partner. He pulled my hand, bringing me to his chest, completely ignoring that we were in the middle of the lobby. He lowered his head until his lips were brushing my ear. "Intumescent varnish," he whispered, his voice vibrating with humor and desire. "You quoted fire codes to the board witch." That was the sexiest thing I've ever seen in my life. I laughed, resting my forehead against his shoulder, feeling the smell of sandalwood calm me. "I did my homework, Mr. Vance. I protect my structure." "You protected both of us," he corrected, kissing my temple. "Now, get back to work, architect. We have a gala to win. And after that, I have plans for you that don't involve fire codes." I pulled away, straightening my blazer with a confident smile. "Yes, boss." I turned my back to him and walked toward the team, my heels clicking on the marble. I had won the first battle. But the Christmas war was just beginning. Friday, the eve of the gala, ended not with a bang, but with a golden sigh. It was 11 p.m. The teams had left. Silence returned to Vance Tower, but it was no longer that vacuum and concrete silence. It was an expectant silence, heavy, like the moment before a conductor raises the baton. I was standing in the center of the lobby, alone. Above me, the ceiling of fiber optic stars twinkled softly against the dark marble, creating the illusion that the building had no roof, just sky. The smell of pine, eucalyptus, and beeswax filled the air. The solid walnut tables were positioned, waiting for the feast. I had done it. I had turned ice into home. "You should go home and rest," Caleb's voice echoed, coming from the direction of the elevators. "Tomorrow you have 600 people to impress." I turned around. He was standing there, hands in his pockets, the relaxed posture of someone who had finally lowered his guard after a day of war against his own board. "I can't go," I admitted, running my hand along the back of a velvet chair. "I'm afraid that if I blink, all this will disappear. That I'll wake up in my dorm and be just the delivery girl again." Caleb walked toward me. The sound of his steps had changed. Before it was authoritative, now it was constant, like a heartbeat on the building floor. "This isn't going to disappear, Anna. And you're never going to be just the delivery girl again. I made sure of that this morning." He stopped in front of me. The amber light of the stars reflected in his eyes, turning the icy blue into something warm, almost liquid. "But we have a logistical problem that you forgot to foresee in your perfect schedule," he said, a corner smile appearing. I frowned, mentally going through my task list. "Impossible. The buffet is confirmed, security is aligned, the lighting is tested." "The first dance," he interrupted. I blinked. "What?" "Gala protocol requires the host to open the dance floor. Traditionally, I would dance with the most senior member of the board, which would mean dragging Ms. Ricci around the floor." He made a face of physical pain. "But, given her performance today, she has been demoted." "Then dance with Isabella. She'll love it." "That would be a political signal that I am bowing to their demands." He shook his head. "No. I'm going to open the floor with the architect responsible for the event. It's a statement of victory." My stomach tied in a knot. "Caleb, I don't know how to waltz. I know how to draw blueprints and calculate structural loads. My feet weren't made for floating." "Lucky for you that I am excellent at leading." He held out his hand. "Let's go up. We need to rehearse. Now. Unless you want to step on my foot in front of all Chicago's elite tomorrow night." The penthouse was in its usual gloom, illuminated only by the Christmas tree and the city outside. Caleb went to the sound system and selected a track. A soft melody of piano and cello began to play. Slow. Melancholy. Immersive. He came back to the center of the room, where there was free space between the Italian design furniture. He took off his shoes, staying only in socks on the Persian rug. "Take off your boots," he instructed softly. "Let's feel the floor." I hesitated, but obeyed. I took off the new boots, staying barefoot. The height difference between us increased. I had to tilt my head back to look into his eyes. Caleb approached. He took my right hand with his left, interlacing our fingers. His right hand went to my waist, not hesitantly, but with the firm possession of someone who knows that territory. He pulled my body until we were inches apart. His heat crossed the silk of my blouse. "The structure of the waltz is simple, Anna," he murmured, his deep voice vibrating in my chest. "It's a triangle. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I am the foundation. You are the elevation." He began to move. I stumbled on the first step. "Relax," he whispered, lightly squeezing my waist. "Stop trying to predict the movement. Stop calculating. Just trust that I am going to move you where you need to go." "I don't like not being in control," I complained, looking at our feet. "Look at me." I raised my gaze. The intensity in his eyes trapped me. "I know you like control. That's why you are brilliant. But for 3 minutes, let me carry the weight. Let me lead." I took a deep breath and let the tension out of my shoulders. I let my body soften against his structure. And then, it worked. We began to spin. Caleb moved with a surprising grace for a man of his size. He led me through the apartment, dodging furniture, spinning near the lit Christmas tree. The music swelled. The world outside, the snow, Ms. Ricci, the debts, the contract, disappeared. There was only the smell of sandalwood, the heat of his hand on my back, and the hypnotic rhythm of 1, 2, 3. In one of the spins, he pulled me closer, eliminating the space between us. My breasts brushed against his chest. My leg touched his thigh. We stopped dancing, but he didn't let go. The music continued to play softly. We were standing in the middle of the room, breathless, embracing. His hand rose from my waist to the back of my neck, fingers getting lost in my hair, which I had let down at some point in the night. His thumb traced the line of my jaw. "You know what's going to happen tomorrow, don't you?" he asked, his voice husky. "The gala," I whispered, hypnotized by his mouth. "Not the event," he shook his head minimally. "The declaration. Tomorrow, when I walk into that hall with you on my arm, there will be no turning back. The world will know that you aren't just a temporary employee." "And what am I, Caleb?" The question came out tremulously. "The contract ends on the 26th. "Tear up the contract," he growled softly, leaning his forehead against mine. "I don't want you until the 26th. I want you on the 27th. And in January. And next spring." He closed his eyes, as if he were in pain. "Do you have any idea of the terror I feel? I am the richest man in this city, and I'm dying of fear that when the music stops, you'll realize that I'm just a broken man in a glass tower and decide to go down that elevator forever." My heart ached for him. For the loneliness he carried like armor. I released my hand from his and took it to his face, touching the stubble on his cheek. "Caleb," I said softly. "I saw you defend my work today. I saw you put ointment on my hands last night. I saw you keep a chewed-up pen for 2 years." I ran my thumb across his lips. "You aren't broken. You're just poorly lit. And I'm the architect. I see the real structure." He opened his eyes. The hope in them was so raw it almost made me cry. "Then light me up, Anna," he asked. "Please." He lowered his head and finally, after 2 years of waiting, after a week of unbearable tension, he kissed me. It wasn't a soft Christmas movie kiss. It was a hungry, desperate kiss, with the taste of coffee and repressed desire. It was the collision of two worlds. He kissed me as if I were oxygen and he had been holding his breath for 730 days. I clung to his shoulders, responding with the same intensity, feeling that for the first time in my life, I wasn't building a house for someone else. I had finally arrived home. The kiss didn't end abruptly. It slowed down, turning into soft touches of forehead against forehead, interlaced breaths, and hands that refused to let go. That night, there were no more words about contracts or deadlines. There was only gravity pulling us to the master bedroom. Not the guest room where I had slept the night before, but Caleb's sanctuary. A space of deep grays and black sheets, which smelled of him in such a concentrated way it made me dizzy. We slept entangled. There was no urgency to make love, but a desire to be held, feeling the heat of skin. Caleb held me as if I were the anchor that prevented the building from floating into space. He slept with his face buried in my neck, and I slept with my hand over his heart, feeling each beat confirm that he was real. Gala morning arrived not with sun, but with a storm of activity. I woke up alone in the immense bed. Caleb's side was cold, but there was a note on his pillow: "When to sort out security. Elias will come up at 10 a.m. with your team. Eat breakfast. That's an order. See." I smiled, stretching. The team he referred to arrived punctually. It wasn't just Elias. It was a tactical beauty squad. Hairdresser, makeup artist, stylist. They invaded the penthouse with rolling suitcases and portable lights, transforming the living room into a Hollywood dressing room. "Mr. Vance was very specific," said the stylist, a man named Julian with thick-rimmed glasses, while opening a long garment bag. He said, "Don't make her look like a princess. Make her look like a queen. Princesses need to be saved. Queens command armies." Julian unzipped the cover. The air left my lungs. It wasn't the kind of dress you buy in stores, not even the most expensive ones. It was a piece of textile architecture. The fabric was a deep night blue, almost black, dotted with microcrystals that caught the light only when I moved, mimicking the starry ceiling I had created in the lobby. The neckline was geometric, structured, leaving the shoulders bare, but rising up the back like a modern collar. The skirt was fluid but had weight, a deep side slit that allowed for movement, and showed off the leg. "It's structural," I whispered, running my hand over the fabric. "It's your signature, dear," Julian winked. "Let's get to work." The following hours were a blur of brushes, hairspray, and adjustments. I let myself be molded, watching in the mirror as the delivery girl disappeared completely. The woman looking back at me had smoky eyes that looked larger and more mysterious, glowing skin, and a posture I didn't know I possessed. At 6 p.m., Elias walked in. He looked nervous, adjusting his own bow tie. "Mr. Vance is waiting in the library. Guests begin to arrive in 30 minutes. Ms. Ricci is already down there, and she brought reinforcements from the press." I felt a chill in my belly. The battlefield was set. "I'm ready," I lied. I walked to the library. The door was ajar. Caleb was with his back to me, looking out the window, watching the snow fall. He wore an impeccable black tuxedo, made to measure, that emphasized the width of his shoulders. His hair was combed back, but a rebellious lock was already falling over his forehead. He looked like the dark prince of a modern fairy tale. I knocked lightly on the door. He turned and froze. The glass of whiskey he was holding stopped halfway to his mouth. His blue eyes widened, scanning me from bottom to top, slowly, absorbing every detail. The dress. The hair pulled back in a sculptural bun. The exposed skin of my neck. He said nothing. He placed the glass on the table with an audible clink and walked toward me. The intensity of his gaze was so physical that I almost backed away. "Say something," I asked, nervously. "Is it too much?" "Julian said that." "It's the most perfect architecture I've ever seen," he interrupted, his voice husky. He stopped in front of me, without touching me, as if he were afraid to stain the perfection. "You're going to stop the heart of every man in that hall, Anna. Including mine." "I only want to stop Isabella Ricci's heart," I joked, trying to lighten the electrical tension. "Oh, you're going to do more than that. You're going to make her disappear." He reached into the inner pocket of the tuxedo and pulled out a long, thin velvet box. "This wasn't part of Julian's costume," I said. "No. This is mine. From my family." He opened the box. Inside, on the white velvet, rested a diamond necklace. But they weren't flowers or delicate hearts. They were diamond baguettes mounted in an Art Deco pattern, straight lines and sharp angles that formed a geometric cascade of light. "It was my grandmother's," Caleb explained, taking the necklace from the box. "She was the only person in this family who understood that beauty needs a spine. She never gave it to my mother. She said it should go to the woman who could tame the steel dot." He moved behind me. I raised my hair, exposing my neck. The cold metal touched my skin, followed by Caleb's warm fingers closing the clasp. He didn't pull away. He kissed the sensitive spot where my neck met the shoulder, sending a shiver through my whole body. "Caleb," I whispered, looking at our reflection in the dark glass of the window. The necklace shone on my neck as if it had been made for that neckline. "This is worth a fortune. I can't accept it." "You aren't accepting a gift, Anna," he murmured against my ear, his hands resting on my waist, possessive. "You're wearing the insignia of my house. When we enter that elevator, you aren't the decorator. You aren't the employee. You are my partner. And this necklace tells everyone in that room that you have my protection, my loyalty, and—" He hesitated, and my heart. I turned in his arms, tears stinging my eyes, and threatening the perfect makeup. "Are you sure? They're going to talk. The board will go crazy." "Let them talk," he smiled, that fierce smile I was starting to love. "While they talk, we build. Shall we?" He offered his arm. I took a deep breath, feeling the comforting weight of the diamonds on my neck and the solidity of the man by my side. "Let's." We entered the private elevator. Caleb pressed the ground floor button. The descent began. I wasn't descending into hell. I was descending to claim my place at the top. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and the sound of the gala hit us like a physical wave. It wasn't noise, it was the muffled symphony of Chicago's elite. The clinking of crystal, the murmur of contained conversations, the string quartet playing live Vivaldi. But when we stepped onto the marble of the lobby, the sound died. A silence of stupefaction swept the hall, starting near the elevators and spreading like a shockwave to the back, where the rustic wooden stage displayed the feast. I didn't know if they were looking at Caleb, the recluse who came down from his tower, or at me, the stranger on his arm wearing the starry night. Or maybe, just maybe, they were looking at the space. The lobby was unrecognizable. My lighting team had worked magic. The high ceiling had disappeared into the darkness, replaced by the thousands of fiber optics that created a private night sky. The low amber light warmed everyone's skin, making even the palest members of the board look healthy and vibrant. The smell of eucalyptus and pine cut through the expensive perfume of the crowd. It wasn't an office. It was a winter cathedral. "Breathe," Caleb murmured beside me, feeling the tension in my arm. "They aren't judging you. They are stunned." "By the necklace or the dress?" "By the woman," he corrected, squeezing my hand against his body. Let's go. We began to walk. The sea of black tuxedos and sequin dresses opened for us. I saw Marcus, my lighting lead, near the soundboard, hidden in the shadows. He gave me a discreet thumbs up. I saw Elena, the florist, adjusting an arrangement of camellias, her eyes shining with pride seeing her work being admired. That was my team. My invisible army. Knowing they were there gave me strength. Caleb, a nasal voice interrupted our triumphant progress. You really innovated this year. It was a short, bald man with an unlit cigar in his hand. One of the biggest real estate investors in the state. Good evening, Mr. Henderson, Caleb greeted, stopping but not letting go of me. Allow me to introduce the one responsible for the innovation. Anna Silva. The architect who brought life back to this building. Mr. Henderson looked at me, surprised. An architect? I heard rumors that you had hired an amateur. Rumors are like smoke, Mr. Henderson, I replied, smiling with the coldness I learned watching Caleb. They dissipate when you light the right light. I hope you are enjoying the acoustics. We used high-density velvet on the columns to absorb reverberation and allow for conversation without shouting. The man blinked, impressed by the technical response. Indeed. It's remarkable. Very nice to meet you, Ms. Silva. We continued to walk. At each step, Caleb introduced me not as his date, but as the creative mind. He was rewriting my narrative in real time, transforming the delivery girl into the prodigious new talent. But not everyone was willing to accept the new story. Near the main tree, surrounded by a court of sycophants, was the Ricci clan. Elena Ricci held a champagne flute as if it were a scepter. Isabella, beside her, wore a red dress that screamed for attention, but that looked shrill in the soft, natural environment I had created. When we approached, Isabella's eyes went straight to my neck. And her face contorted into something ugly. Caleb, Ms. Ricci said, her soft voice carrying poison. You've made quite an entrance. The night demands it, Caleb replied neutrally. The matriarch's eyes went down to my lap. She recognized the jewel. I saw real shock, for the first time, break through her Botox mask. That necklace, she whispered, the glass trembling slightly in her hand. That necklace was your grandmother's, Victoria. I haven't seen it since her funeral in 1998. She raised her eyes to Caleb, and there was a new kind of calculation in them. Fear. You know what it means to give that piece to someone, Caleb. Victoria said it would only be worn by the woman who would rule by my side, Caleb completed, his voice of steel. I know exactly what it means, Elena. And by the look of it, you know too. Isabella gasped. You were joking. Her? The girl who served my lunch last week? The girl who designed the stage you are standing on right now, I said, interrupting before Caleb could roar. I released his arm slightly and took a step forward, facing Isabella alone. Design is about function and form, Isabella, I continued, calm. My function last week was to feed. My function today is to lead the aesthetics of this company. Apparently, I am competent in both. And you? What is your function, besides wearing red in an environment of earthy tones? Someone in the group behind them let out a stifled laugh. Isabella's face turned the color of the dress. You are insolent, she hissed. I am efficient, I corrected. I felt Caleb's hand rest on the base of my back, radiating warmth and approval. Ladies, he said, ending the conversation. The music is starting. And I promised the first waltz to my partner. He led me away from them, to the center of the dance floor I had marked out with lights embedded in the floor. The string quartet struck the first notes of Blue Danube. The hall stopped. 600 people held their breath. Caleb turned to me. By the light of my artificial stars, he looked like a god. "You destroyed Isabella with interior design," he whispered, a smile of pure joy on his face. "I am so in love with you I can hardly breathe." My heart skipped a beat. He said the word. In love. Caleb. "Shoo, dance now. Talk later." He put his hand on my waist. I put mine on his shoulder. And exactly as we practiced in the penthouse, in socks and bare feet, we began to move. 1, 2, 3. I didn't stumble. The blue dress spun around us like a liquid galaxy. I looked up at the ceiling I designed, and then at the man who gave me the tools to build it. I no longer saw the investors, or the board, or the envious Ricci's. I only saw the blue of his eyes. "I am the foundation," he murmured, guiding me in a complex spin that made the skirt fly. "I am the elevation," I replied, smiling. We were in the center of the world we built together. And for the first time, Vance Tower wasn't just a building. It was our castle. But as in any good project, I should have foreseen that the external variable, chaos, always tries to bring down the structure. As we spun, I saw a movement in the periphery of my vision. Near the service entrance, where the catering team came and went. A man. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He wore the Salbori Arte uniform. But he wasn't carrying a tray. He was standing, staring fixedly at us, with a phone to his ear. And he wasn't smiling. I recognized the face. It was Greg, one of the kitchen assistants I thought had been fired last month for theft. What was he doing there? I lost my step. "Anna?" Caleb asked, holding me firmly so I wouldn't fall. "Someone is there," I whispered, "someone who shouldn't be here." But when I looked again, on the next spin of the waltz, the man had disappeared into the shadows I myself had created. The music ended to polite but enthusiastic applause. Caleb kissed my hand, a chivalrous gesture that sealed our performance before Chicago's elite. He was radiant, with that glow of triumph in his eyes of someone who had just won the biggest game of his life. "Let's go up," he whispered in my ear, his voice warm, promising things that would make the board blush. "We've done the show. No one will notice if the hosts disappear for an hour." I wanted to say yes. God, how I wanted to go up that elevator and forget the world. But the image of Greg, the ex-employee fired for theft, talking on his phone in the shadows, pulsed in my mind like a red alert signal. Greg knew the building. He knew the catering team's hours. And he had every reason to hate me. I was the witness who confirmed his theft to Nana. "Give me 5 minutes," I asked, gently releasing Caleb's hand. "I need to check the dessert station." Nana was worried about the dry ice supply for the fog effect. "Anna, Nana has total control. You don't need." 5 minutes, I insisted, touching the lapel of his tuxedo. "It's my signature on this event, Caleb. If something goes wrong, it's my name." He sighed, but nodded, kissing my forehead. 5 minutes. "If you don't come back, I'm sending Elias to get you with a tactical team." I smiled, faking calm, and headed toward the service area. As soon as I passed through the heavy velvet curtains that separated the ballroom from the service corridors, the glamour vanished. The noise of the party became muffled. The smell of perfume was replaced by the sterile smell of concrete and cleaning products. The corridor was empty. The lights here were fluorescent, white and harsh, buzzing with an irritating frequency. "Greg?" I called, my voice echoing. Nothing. Only the distant sound of plates being stacked in the industrial kitchen further ahead. I walked fast, my Italian heels making too much noise on the linoleum floor. I knew where to go. If Greg wanted to cause trouble, he wouldn't go to the crowded kitchen. He would go to the infrastructure. I turned left, toward the auxiliary electrical control room, where Marcus had installed the main dimmers for the starry ceiling. The door was ajar. My heart raced. That door should be locked. Only Marcus and security had the key. I pushed the door slowly. Greg was there. He wore the white waiter uniform, but it was dirty with grease. He was bent over the main breaker panel, holding a pair of pliers and a device that looked like a makeshift timer. "Greg!" I shouted, entering the room. He jumped, dropping the pliers with a metallic bang. When he turned around, I saw fear in his eyes, quickly replaced by a sneer. "Look at her," he mocked, crossing his arms. "The risotto Cinderella. Nice clothes, Anna. How much did they cost? More than we made in a year? What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my distance but blocking the exit. My hand went instinctively to the walkie-talkie I had hidden in the slit of my dress, a work habit I hadn't been able to quit. "Working. Doing a gig." He kicked the electrical panel lightly. "I was offered a very good bonus to ensure your little party had a blackout at the right moment." My body went cold. Sabotage. "Who paid you, Greg?" "Isabella?" He laughed, a bitter sound. "The name doesn't matter. What matters is that people like them pay people like me to screw over people like you, who think they can move up a floor. Did you forget where you came from, Anna? Do you think that diamond necklace makes you one of them?" "I never forgot where I came from," I replied, my voice firm, though my hands shook. "But I work to earn my place. I don't destroy other people's work." "Yeah, well, honest work doesn't pay my gambling debts. This job here pays." He moved fast, his hand going for a red lever on the panel. The emergency lever. It wouldn't just cut the light, it would trigger the fire sprinklers. Water. On top of all the wood, the velvet, the temporary electrical wiring. On top of the guests. It would be chaos. The end of the event. The end of my reputation. Proof that Ms. Ricci was right about the security risk. "Don't do it," I warned, taking a step forward. "Too late, princess." I didn't think. The instinct to protect my structure, my project, spoke louder than fear. I lunged at him. I wasn't a fighter, but Greg didn't expect Cinderella to attack. I hit his arm, deflecting his hand from the lever. He grunted, pushing me hard. My back hit the metal cabinets. Pain exploded in my shoulder blade. The walkie-talkie fell from my hand and slid away, under a table. "You're crazy," he shouted, coming at me. "Caleb!" I screamed, hoping someone, anyone, would hear through the thick walls. Greg grabbed my wrist, squeezing hard, trying to immobilize me to reach the lever. "Be quiet. It'll just be a cold bath. They deserve it, and you too." I fought, kicking his shin with the hard tip of my Italian boot. He howled in pain, letting go of my wrist for a second. It was enough. I spun my body and hit my hand on the only thing within reach, the silent intrusion alarm button on the wall, which Marcus had shown me days ago. A red light began to flash in the room. No sound. Just the direct warning to the security center. Greg saw the light. His face turned pale. "You bitch." He raised his hand to hit me, but the control room door opened with a bang that made the floor shake. It wasn't security. It was Caleb. He was without the tuxedo jacket. His white shirt was rolled up. And the expression on his face wasn't human. It was pure concentrated violence. "Take your hands off her," Caleb said. The voice wasn't a shout. It was a whisper of death. Greg froze, hands still raised. He looked at Caleb, then at me, and realized too late that he had made the fatal mistake of touching what belonged to the monster of the tower. Mr. Vance, Greg stammered, backing away. Caleb didn't wait for explanations. He crossed the room in 2 long strides. He grabbed Greg by the uniform collar and threw him against the opposite wall as if he were a rag doll. Greg slid to the floor, stunned. Caleb didn't even look at him. He turned to me immediately, his large, trembling hands coming to my face, my shoulders, frantically checking. Anna. Are you hurt? Did he hurt you? I'm fine, I gasped, the adrenaline still running. He was going to trigger the sprinklers. He was paid to ruin the gala. Caleb looked at the emergency lever, then at Greg, who was trying to get up. Understanding darkened Caleb's blue eyes. Sabotage, he growled. At that moment, Elias and Mr. O'Malley, the head of security, came running into the room, guns drawn, followed by 2 guards. Hold him, Caleb ordered, pointing at Greg without taking his eyes off me. Take him to the basement security room. No one talks to him. No one goes in there. I will interrogate him personally after I get Anna out of here. No, I said, holding Caleb's arm. We aren't leaving. Caleb looked at me, incredulous. Anna, he attacked you. It's over. The event is over. It's not over, I straightened my posture, ignoring the pain in my back. I fixed my dress, smoothed my hair. If we leave now, whoever paid him wins. They want to prove I'm a risk, that I bring chaos. If I run away, they win. I looked at Greg, who was being handcuffed by O'Malley. Who paid you, Greg? I asked, cold. Ask the woman in red. She said she wanted to see the architect drown. Isabella. Caleb closed his eyes, breathing deep, fighting to control a fury that could set the building on fire. I'm going to destroy her life, he promised to the concrete ceiling. I'm going to dismantle every penny her family has. You will, I agreed, taking his hand. But tomorrow. Today, we are going back to that hall. We are going to smile. We are going to toast. And we are going to show her that our structure has no cracks. Caleb looked at me. There was amazement on his face. You're made of titanium, he murmured, kissing my forehead hard. You're the strongest woman I've ever met. He took his own pocket square and gently wiped a grease stain off my arm, left by Greg's hand. Ready for the second act, Ms. Architect? Always, Mr. Vance. We left the control room, leaving the shadow and betrayal behind, and walked back to the golden light of our triumph. But now, Caleb's smile was no longer just of happiness. It was the smile of a king who had just discovered who the traitors in his court were, and who was already sharpening his sword. Returning to the ballroom was like stepping through a dimensional portal. Behind us, in the service corridor, were the grease, the betrayal, and the violence. Before us, the classical music continued to play, the crystal glasses continued to clink, and Chicago's elite remained oblivious to the fact that, by a hair, they hadn't been bathed in dirty fire system water. Caleb stopped at the entrance of the velvet curtains. He held my face with both hands, examining me one last time. There's a grease stain on your wrist, he murmured, rubbing the spot with his thumb until the skin turned red but clean. And you're pale. I'm furious, I corrected, adjusting the strap of my midnight blue dress. It's different. Keep that fury, he said, his eyes shining with a lethal promise. Use it to keep your head held high. Isabella is expecting a disaster. Let's give her perfection. We entered. The visual impact of our return was immediate. We walked arm in arm, not with the lightness of the first dance, but with the synchronized march of generals inspecting their troops after a battle. My eyes swept the room, ignoring the fake smiles and nods, looking for the red dress. I found her near the chocolate fountain, an extravagant addition Nana had insisted on. Isabella Ricci was looking at the ceiling. Then she looked at the diamond watch on her wrist. Then at the ceiling again. She was waiting for the rain. When she saw us, the shock on her face was so genuine I almost laughed. She expected to see panic. She expected to see security running, guests screaming, the kitchen girl humiliated and drenched. Instead, she saw the architect, dry, impeccable, on the arm of the most powerful man in the room, walking toward the stage. Caleb squeezed my hand against his body and whispered, "Smile at her. It's what hurts the most." I smiled. It was a cold smile, sharp as broken glass, directed solely at Isabella. I saw her throat work as she swallowed hard. She knew she had failed. And worse, she knew that we knew. We went up on the rustic wooden stage. The music stopped. The murmuring ceased. Caleb let go of my arm and went to the microphone. He didn't need to tap the glass to call for silence. His presence was enough. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice echoed, grave and steady, without any trace of the man who minutes before had thrown a saboteur against the wall. "I hope you are enjoying the evening. They say architecture is frozen music. If that is true, tonight is a symphony." There were murmurs of approval. Caleb looked at the crowd, his blue eyes finding those of Elena Ricci and, beside her, the terrified Isabella. Many doubted the vision for this event, he continued, the tone casual but loaded with subtext. They said it was risky. They said bringing organic life into a steel structure was dangerous. Flammable, even. Isabella took a step back, bumping into a waiter. "But what my critics forgot," Caleb said, his voice hardening, "is that steel is only strong because it is flexible. And that a structure only falls if its foundation is weak." He turned and held out his hand to me. "I would like to propose a toast." He took a glass a waiter offered him. "Not to the company. Not to the profits. But to the architect who saw the soul of this building when everyone else, including me, only saw concrete." Caleb pulled me to the center of the stage, into the light of the amber spotlight. "To Anna Silva. The woman who designed tonight. And the woman who protected tonight from any inclemency." He raised his glass. "To Anna. To Anna." The hall responded in unison. 600 voices toasting my name. I drank the champagne, feeling the bubbles and the victory go down my throat. I looked at Isabella one last time. She wasn't toasting. She was moving away, fleeing toward the exit, defeated by her own trap that had failed to fire. Caleb lowered his glass and turned off the microphone, but remained close enough that no one else could hear. "Greg confessed in the security room," he murmured, without stopping to smile for the photographers. "O'Malley just sent me the message." He turned in Isabella, her mother, and the payment scheme. "And now?" I asked, keeping my queenly smile. "Now, the party is over for them," he replied. "Tomorrow morning, their lawyers will receive notice. Attempted industrial sabotage, property damage, conspiracy. They'll be off the board before lunch and, hopefully, indicted before dinner." He kissed my hand, a final gesture for the cameras. "But that's tomorrow's Caleb's problem. Today's Caleb only wants to get you out of here." We descended from the stage. The rest of the night was a golden blur. Congratulations, compliments, business cards being pushed into my hand by people who last week wouldn't even look me in the eye. I accepted them all, tucking them into my bag, knowing that my future as an architect was being built right there, brick by brick. At 2 a.m., the last guest left. The lobby fell silent again, but now it was messy with the remnants of the party, linen napkins, empty glasses, golden confetti on the marble floor. I took off my shoes, holding them in one hand. My feet throbbed, my back ached where I had hit the cabinet, and the emotional exhaustion was starting to take its toll. "Let's go home," Caleb said, appearing by my side. He was also undone, his bow tie loose, his collar open. We got into the private elevator for the last time that night. When the doors closed, cutting off the view of the lobby I had transformed, I rested my forehead against the cold elevator mirror and closed my eyes. "We won," I whispered. "We survived," Caleb corrected, moving to stand behind me. He wrapped his arms around my waist, pulling me to his solid chest. His chin rested on my bare shoulder. "They tried to bring down the house, Anna. And you held a roof with your own hands." The elevator rose, taking us away from the battlefield toward the silence of the penthouse where there were no more secrets, no more enemies, just the two of us and the Christmas tree that had started it all. The penthouse door closed, locking the world outside. The silence of the 50th floor was absolute, a violent contrast to the constant hum of the last 6 hours. Caleb didn't turn on the main lights. Only the Christmas tree and the fireplace lit the space. He let go of my waist, but didn't pull away. He stood watching me, his eyes sweeping over my tired face, my partially loose hair, my bare feet holding the expensive boots. "Turn around," he asked, his voice low and husky. I obeyed, turning my back to him. I felt his hands push my hair away from my neck. The cold touch of the diamond necklace metal was replaced by his warm fingers undoing the clasp. He removed the heavy jewelry and placed it on the entryway console. Next, I heard the sound of my dress zipper being opened. The cold air of the apartment touched my skin, but lasted only a second before Caleb's hands covered my bare back. He stopped. His body went rigid against mine. "Christ, Anna." He had seen it. I looked down and saw the blue dress fall at my feet, forming a puddle of silk and crystals on the floor. I was left in only black lace lingerie. I turned my head to try to see what he was looking at. In the entry hall mirror, I saw the reflection of my back. At the height of my left shoulder blade, where I had hit against the metal cabinet in the control room, a horrible bruise was forming. Purple, dark blue, and yellow. The mark of Greg's violence. The mark of the price I paid to protect the event. "It's nothing," I tried to minimize, pulling the dress up to cover. "Just a bruise. It hurts less than my feet." Caleb didn't let me cover it. He turned my body gently to face him, then picked me up in his arms without warning. "Caleb, you're not walking anymore today," he decreed, walking toward the master suite bathroom. He sat me on the edge of the enormous marble tub. Without saying a word, he turned on the taps, adjusting the temperature. He threw bath salts into the water. While the tub filled, he went to the medicine cabinet and returned with an ointment and a cold towel. He knelt in front of me, still wearing the undone tuxedo. "This is my fault," he said, his voice full of a dark, heavy guilt. He pressed the cold towel against my shoulder. I shivered, but not from cold. "I brought you into this world. I dressed you like a queen and put you in the line of fire." "I put myself in the line of fire," I corrected, touching his hair. "I saw a flaw in the structure and acted to contain it. It's what I do." "You're not security, Anna. You're..." He paused, looking for the word, "You're precious." If he had hurt you more, if I had arrived a second late. But you arrived. You were there. I lifted his chin so he would look at me. "We held the roof, remember?" He sighed, defeated by my logic, and rested his forehead against my bare knee. We stayed like that for a moment, in the bathroom steam, the most powerful man in the city kneeling at the feet of the wounded architect. "Get in the water," he murmured, standing up. "It will help with the muscle pain. I'll go find you something to wear." When he left, I slid into the hot water. It was like being hugged. My muscles screamed in relief. I closed my eyes, letting the images of the night pass through my mind, the toast, Isabella's face, the dance. It had been the most amazing and most terrifying night of my life. And now it was over. The contract technically ended on the 26th. Today was already the early hours of the 24th. 2 days left. And then? Would I go back to the dorm? Would I go back to delivering lunchboxes, but now with a diamond necklace in the drawer and a broken heart? I heard the door open. Caleb returned. He had taken off the tuxedo and now wore only soft cotton pajama pants. He brought a clean t-shirt in his hand and a glass of wine. He sat on the edge of the tub. "I don't want you to leave," he said, as if he had read my thoughts through the steam. I sank a little deeper into the water, up to my chin. "The party is over, Caleb. The job is done. The job is done. We are not." He put the glass on the floor and dipped his hand into the water, finding mine. "When we wake up, it will be Christmas Eve. I hate Christmas. You know that." "I know. But this year..." He squeezed my wet hand. "This year, I don't want to spend the day drinking whiskey and ignoring the phone. I want to spend the day watching you open presents. I want to see you eat panettone in my bed and fill this place with crumbs." He leaned in, his face hovering over the water. "Stay, Anna. Not for the contract. Not because I'm buying your time. Stay because the house is empty without you. Because I am empty without you." It was the most vulnerable declaration he could make. He wasn't offering luxury, he was offering his naked, raw need. I rose from the water, not caring about the nudity, not caring about the bruise or the insecurities. Water dripped from my body as I moved toward him. Caleb wrapped me in a large, plush towel before I could even feel cold. He dried me with gentle, almost reverent movements, avoiding the bruise on my back but kissing the skin around it. "I'll stay," I whispered against his chest. "I'll stay for Christmas. I'll stay for the crumbs." He picked me up in his arms again and took me to bed. This time, there was not just the comfort of sleep. There was the urgency of reaffirming life after danger. We made love with the slowness of someone who has all the time in the world and the intensity of someone who almost lost everything. Caleb touched me as if he were memorizing my structure, mapping every curve, every scar, every response. And when we finally fell asleep, with the snow falling outside and the silent city below us, I knew that no matter what the contract said, I had already signed my soul into that building long before I put pen to paper. Christmas morning at Vance Tower had no alarms, no phones ringing, no deadlines. There was only the sun reflecting off the blinding snow outside and the smell of coffee and burnt pancakes. I opened my eyes, reaching my arm to the other side of the bed. Empty. But the sheets were still warm. I got up, wearing Caleb's same t-shirt from the night before, now my official property, apparently. The bruise on my back throbbed less today, a memory that was starting to fade, just like the fear of last night. I walked barefoot to the kitchen. The scene I found made me stop in the doorway, leaning my shoulder against the wood to just watch. Caleb Vance, the man who moved a real estate market with a wave of his hand, was fighting a frying pan. He was wearing plaid pajama pants, which I didn't even know he owned, and was covered in a cloud of flour. There was batter on the black marble counter, eggshells in the sink, and an expression of intense concentration on his face. "The thermodynamics of this batter is unstable," he muttered to himself, trying to flip a pancake that seemed to have decided to fuse with the Teflon. I couldn't hold it back. I let out a loud laugh. He turned, spatula in hand like a weapon. There was a white flour smudge on his cheek, right above his stubble. "Don't laugh," he warned, though his eyes were laughing. I'm an expert in concrete and steel. Organic breakfast chemistry is not my area. You're cooking on too high a heat, I said, walking toward him and taking the spatula from his hand. It's a pancake, Caleb, not a metal foundry. It needs gentleness. I lowered the heat. I unstuck the batter carefully. I wanted it to be a surprise, he admitted, hugging me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder while I saved breakfast. Breakfast in bed. The full cliché. I prefer it this way, I replied, flipping the pancake perfectly. Imperfect. Messy. Real. We ate sitting on the living room floor, leaning against the sofa, facing the glass Christmas tree that sparkled in the morning light. The plate of pancakes, half burnt, half raw, but delicious, was between us. I have something for you, I said, wiping my hands and picking up a package wrapped in brown paper I had hidden behind the tree. Caleb stopped chewing. I said, no expensive presents, Anna. You're paying for college. It didn't cost money. It cost graphite. He took the package and tore the paper carefully. It was a drawing. A charcoal and graphite sketch on textured paper, framed in simple wood. It wasn't a drawing of him. Nor of the tower. It was the view from his office window. The view from above, looking down through the snow, focusing on the small red brick building of Sabori Arte. But in a reflection of the drawn window glass, one could see the vague silhouette of a lonely man, with his hand on the glass, watching. In the corner, I had written, the view that saved us. Caleb looked at the drawing for a long time. I saw his throat work. He ran his finger over the silhouette of the man in the glass. That's how I saw myself, he whispered. A ghost trapped in an aquarium. No more, I promised, kissing his cheek. Now you're on the outside of the glass. He placed the picture carefully on the sofa and turned to me. His expression changed. It became serious, intense. My turn. He didn't grab a small jewelry box. He stood up, went to the work desk, the one with the big pen, and returned bringing a black, heavy, leather architecture project carrying tube. My heart raced. Caleb, what is this? Open it. I opened the cap and pulled out the large sheets of bluish paper. I unrolled them on the floor, over the Persian rug. They were floor plans. Sections. Elevations. But it wasn't a commercial building. It wasn't a glass skyscraper. It was a low, organic complex, full of natural light and internal gardens. A community center. There were spaces for art workshops, industrial kitchens for cooking classes, open libraries. I read the stamp in the lower right corner of the plan. Project, Vance Arts and Community Center. Location, North Grounds, Old Textile Factory. Responsible architect, Anna Silva. The air vanished from the room. This is... I stammered, pointing to my name printed on the company's official paper. This is the abandoned factory site? The one worth millions? I bought it this morning. Well, Elias bought it, technically, Caleb said, sitting beside me and pointing to the lines on the drawing. I used your college sketches. The ones you left in the notebook on the night we designed the gala. I saw your notes on how architecture can heal forgotten neighborhoods. He took my hand, the one he had applied ointment to days ago. I don't just want to date you, Anna. I don't just want you to live here. I want to build with you. He looked into my eyes, with a terrible and beautiful vulnerability. You said I was the foundation and you were the elevation. So let's do it for real. I provide the capital, the land, and the engineering. You provide the soul, the design, and the vision. Be my partner. Be the chief architect of the Vance Foundation. I looked at the plans. It was my dream. The project I drew in the margins of my notebooks during boring classes. He hadn't given me a piece of jewelry to wear around my neck, he had given me a career. He had given me autonomy. I haven't even graduated yet, I whispered, with tears filling my eyes. You graduate in 6 months. Exactly enough time to clear the land and prepare the foundation, he smiled. And I have a slight suspicion that the owner of the construction company won't mind waiting. Caleb. Say yes, Anna. Say yes to the building. Say yes to the partnership. And, for God's sake, say yes to staying in this tower with me, because I had all my expensive pens thrown away and bought a box of Bics just for you to bite. I laughed, and the tears came with it, a mixture of relief and pure joy. I threw myself into his arms, knocking him onto the rug, ignoring the plans and the pancakes. Yes, I said against his mouth. Yes to the building. Yes to the partnership. Yes to you. He kissed me, and it tasted like coffee, maple syrup, and fulfilled promises. Outside, the snow stopped falling, and the Christmas sun finally broke through the clouds, lighting up the room. But we no longer needed the sun. We had our own light. And we had a lot of work to do. Christmas Day dawned not with the austere silence Caleb knew, but with a golden light that flooded the penthouse, reflecting off the pristine Chicago snow. After the lazy morning with imperfect pancakes and the partnership proposal for the new community center, Caleb decreed, no more tower. Today, we descend. To where? I asked, while he helped me into a camel-colored wool coat he had, mysteriously, provided along with the rest of my new wardrobe. To the real world, he replied, wrapping a scarf around my neck and kissing the tip of my cold nose. You brought Christmas inside my building. Now I want to see Christmas outside with you. We went out. Not in the armored car with a driver, but on foot. We walked down Michigan Avenue holding hands. Caleb Vance, the man who always watched the city from above or through smoked glass, was now in the middle of the crowd, breathing the cold air, with snow falling on his dark eyelashes. We went to Millennium Park. We stopped before the bean sculpture, Cloud Gate, seeing our distorted reflections in the polished metal, me laughing with flushed cheeks, him with a relaxed smile that took 10 years of weight off his shoulders. He bought roasted chestnuts from a street vendor and we shared the bag, burning our fingers and laughing. He stopped to hear a choir singing Christmas carols on the steps of the Art Institute, holding my waist as if he wanted to ensure I wouldn't disappear in the crowd. I've never done this, he admitted softly, as we looked at the lights on the street trees. Walking without a destination. Without an agenda. That's how memories are built, Caleb. Without a floor plan. Just living the space. But the high point of the day happened at nightfall. We took a taxi, yes, a regular taxi, to Caleb's shock, to the neighborhood where Sabori Arte was located. The street was closed to cars, transformed into a community Christmas fair. There were lights crossing the brick buildings, the smell of mulled wine and cinnamon, children running and loud music. When we entered the restaurant, we weren't received as customers. We were received as family. Nana, small and energetic, came out of the kitchen wiping her hands on her apron. She completely ignored the fact that Caleb was the billionaire owner of the city. She pulled him by the lapel of his expensive coat and gave him 2 loud kisses on the cheeks. You're too thin, Bambino, she decreed. And too serious. Sit down. We're going to fix that. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. Long tables were joined. Employees, neighbors, friends, and us. There were platters of steaming lasagna, roasted ham, bottles of cheap wine that tasted like happiness. Caleb, initially stiff, relaxed. I saw him laughing at a cook's joke. I saw him pouring wine for Mrs. Hernandez from the laundry next door. I saw him be just a man. A man who had found a place where he didn't need to be a fortress. He looks at you as if you were the sun, Nana whispered in my ear while bringing the tiramisu. Don't let him get away, Anna. Men who look like that are rare. I won't, I promised, squeezing her hand. We went back to Vance Tower near midnight, loaded with leftovers, for breakfast, Nana insisted, and with our hearts overflowing. The ride up the elevator was silent, but charged with a different electricity. It wasn't tension. It was anticipation. When we entered the penthouse, Caleb didn't turn on the main lights. Only the fireplace and our Christmas tree, with its amber lights and glass ornaments, lit the space. The view of the city outside was a carpet of diamonds, but Caleb didn't look at the window. He went to the sound system. A soft melody of jazz, saxophone, and piano began to fill the room. The way you look tonight. He took off his jacket and threw it over an armchair. He walked toward me and held out his hand. Grant me this dance, Ms. Architect. No audience this time. No board. No show. I accepted his hand. We danced in the center of the room, slowly, bodies glued together. My head rested on his chest, listening to the constant rhythm of his heart. His hands on my back were firm, protective, tracing the line of my spine. This was the best Christmas of my life, he murmured against my hair. Mine too. Do you know why? He pulled back a bit, just enough to look at my face. The firelight danced in his blue eyes, making them deep like the ocean. Because of the chestnuts? I joked softly. Because I spent my whole life building structures to protect myself from the cold, he said, seriously. I built walls. I installed bulletproof glass. I thought safety was not needing anyone. He took his hand to his trouser pocket. The world stopped. The music seemed to have become lower. The sound of snow hitting the glass disappeared. Caleb Vance, the man who never bowed, knelt. There, on the Persian rug, under the light of the tree we decorated together, he took out a small black velvet box. It wasn't the necklace box. It was smaller. More intimate. He opened it. Inside, there was a ring. It wasn't ostentatious like the necklace. It was a single, pure diamond, cut in a square, architectural shape, mounted on a simple and elegant platinum band. It was perfect. It was structural. It was me. Anna, his voice failed, loaded with emotion. You entered this building with a thermal bag and fixed my life. You taught me that a house without warmth is just concrete. You taught me that love is the only structure that truly supports the weight of the world. Hot tears began to stream down my face. I took my hands to my mouth. I gave you a necklace to show the world that you were under my protection, he continued, his watery eyes fixed on mine. But I give you this ring to ask for your protection. To ask you to stay. To be my partner, my associate, my family. He took a deep breath. Anna Silva, will you marry me? Will you build the rest of your life by my side? I fell to my knees in front of him, ignoring protocol, ignoring elegance. I needed to be on his level. Yes, I sobbed, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, Caleb. 1,000 times yes. He took the ring from the box with trembling hands and slid it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. He kissed me then, and it wasn't like the gala kiss or the night before. It was a ceiling kiss. A kiss that promised warm winters, shared projects, noisy Christmases, and a whole lifetime of love built on the solid rock of what we had found in each other. Caleb rested his forehead against mine, both kneeling on the floor, embracing. You were my greatest Christmas gift, he whispered, smiling against my lips. And we have a lot of work to do, he whispered. What? More decoration? No, he looked at the ring on my finger and then at the vast penthouse around us. We have to plan how we're going to fill this house with life. And I have a feeling we're going to need a much bigger Christmas tree next year. Outside, the city of Chicago shone, cold and magnificent. But in here, at the top of the building, winter had ended forever. It was, finally, and permanently, Christmas. The end.